I've been here a while. I just. So you can sit here. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to welcome members of the residents, staff, and Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, Commissioners, and Amanda, who's the most important person here. But anyway, I'd like to call the February 13th, 2023 Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission meeting to order with this gavel. So now we're in order. Can we do a roll call, please, Amanda?
Yes. Chair Michael von Neumann.
Present.
Vice Chair June Hansberger.
Present.
Glenn Johnson.
Present.
Patricia Trouth.
Present.
Jim Wong. Harold Standifer. And James Gross.
Okay. Like to invite everybody to stand. We'll do Pledge of Allegiance. And ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Before we get going, I want to congratulate Glenn Johnson and also James Gross for being selected again to serve on the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. So thank you. there's a new member who will be joining in March, and his name is David Thiele, Thile. So first order is approval of minutes. Hopefully people have had an opportunity to look over the minutes, and I entertain a motion to approve, or if there are any changes.
My name was misspelled several times. Even though it's only 4 letters.
Ouch.
Thank you.
I told this guy I'm in a meeting. Okay. With that, and do we have a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
Motion to approve with that change.
Okay, and Michael is an idiot, cannot turn us off. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, we're doing voice yeas and nays? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Let the record show there was no opposed. Okay. First thing we do is we do oral communications. It's an opportunity for anybody to come up and address any issue that they would like with us. And it's a 3-minute time limit. We can't engage in dialogue, but oftentimes, depending on what somebody says, we might address or refer to it at the end of the meeting in what we call Commissioner Corner. So with that, do we have any speakers or oral communication?
We do. We have Christine Schindler, followed by Judy Burlfine.
Right.
Hello, everyone. Christine Schindler, East Encinitas. Thank you for your service as commissioners and for city staff for everything you do each and every day. So a group of us from Encinitas Bike Walk got together several months ago to have a field trip. We do this occasionally. So Bike Walk Encinitas, or Encinitas Bike Walk, is an advocacy group working in the community, hoping to improve bike and ped infrastructure. And what we did specifically, we went to a couple of school areas to look at the roadways and the conditions and to think about potential quick build ideas to bring some traffic calming and slow speeds down in those areas. So we went to an area around Oakcrest, Ocean Knoll, SDA, and Sunset. And we had someone with us who is an active transportation planner who is specifically thinking about quick build ideas so that we could maybe come up with some suggestions that are low cost, easily, fastly, I don't think that's a word, can quickly be installed and would hopefully have some good effect as far as slowing people down, forcing them to be a little bit more deliberate in school areas during those busy drop-off pickup times. So, schools, they bring a lot of traffic congestion. We're trying to encourage more biking, walking, rolling to school. We have this influx of e-bikes that have happened over the last several years. So there's concerns, of course, and there's opportunity. So that's what we were doing in this process. So Judy has some visuals, and she's actually going to go through one by one the locations that we looked at, and she's going to share the recommendations that Tom Petrellis gave to the group. And then we hope that going forward, that you'll take these into consideration, that perhaps staff can look into these ideas, and not only in these particular school areas, but they may be good additions in our community to other school areas and maybe other areas where the traffic patterns are an appropriate fit. So thank you, Michael, for your time on the commission and sharing, and for your participation as well as part of Encinitas Bike Walk. And Judy will continue.
Thank you. Can you bring up the slides? And while you're bringing them up, I just also, before I make these other comments, there are 2 items on the log that I wanted to bring to your attention that I would love some focus on. One is the signal timing for bicycles, and the other one that I know Jim Wong has talked a lot about, and I totally agree with, is the bike loop detection signage, which it says it's going to be addressed in August, so that would be great. It's really frustrating when you're on a bike and the signal doesn't change. Okay, so with that said, we're looking at safe routes to school, and we have 4. Tom was generous enough with his time to create 4 different diagrams. He would be here to present them, but he has to drive up from work from San Diego, and he couldn't make this meeting. So if you can go to the next slide. So it's a little hard to see with the captions there, but this is the main idea here. There are 2 main ideas that we're presenting, and the way you want to think about this is these are inexpensive solutions to big problems. They may not be the complete solution, but they're a first step. Just like in Leucadia, they put up that roundabout that turns out people don't really like the way it looks, but as I understand it, they like the way it functions. So it's great to be able to test projects out before actually spending a huge amount of money to implement them. So what we have in mind on these 4 different slides is very inexpensive solutions to begin to slow the cars down so there's less friction between the cyclists and the cars. So you see these little state law stop for pedestrians within crosswalk, all of those green dots. This is at Riqueza and Nardo, which is very close to Sunset High School. So if we place those units, I don't know what you call them, right at the green dots, it forces the cars when they stop to have to go around them if they make turns, because turns are really the most dangerous place. Turning left, turning right, it's a great way to get hit. Okay, can you go to the next slide? And this is a similar recommendation. This is at Ballure and Melba, which is right between Oakcrest and Ocean Knoll. There's, as it's shown on the first slide, there's those 4 schools all really close to each other: SDA, Ocean Knoll, Oakcrest, and Sunset. And I don't leave my house at drop-off or pickup time, especially on a bicycle, because it's just nuts there. So this is the same idea, to place those the signs that force people to have to drive around them, and also to include crosswalks. So the next slide is, oh, I used up all my time. Okay. So this is at Riqueza and Westlake, which is a really dangerous area. I do ride by there a lot. And the suggestion is not just to put those units that were in the other picture, but to slow people down going around the corners. So you can see they're either including bollards, but they're also these units that you can put right at the turns that makes the right turns much more deliberate and not, cutting someone off who's right there in that space. So that's the recommendation for here at Riqueza and Westlake, and the next one is the same kinds of recommendations at Ballure and Oakcrest, coming out of Oakcrest Junior High. So those are the ideas. Thank you.
Judy, just a question. Thank you for your presentation. Have there been problems at these intersections? Have there been complaints? Have there been injuries? Any reports? I understand that we always want to slow traffic down, and I know how people like cutting corners. That will be another item on our agenda of another intersection where people like to cut through and cut corners, and that's what this proposal, I think, means to do, is slow down traffic from cutting corners.
Yeah, so I don't have any hard data. I haven't gone out there and measured the speed. But I have been in those areas, and I've been a mother of children at schools, and I know, and I've gone recently to schools during walk to school day. And when people are dropping off their kids, they're trying to get to work and they're all in a rush. And there are always too many cars in too small a space. So I don't have the exact answer. I don't know of specific collisions or anything like that, but I do know that that's what you see, an intense amount of congestion at drop-off and pickup time for all of these schools.
Thank you. We can discuss this a little more during Commissioner Corner if you would like.
Yes, that'd be good, because I think
Okay.
this idea
So we're
has
going to
merit.
go past oral communications right now?
Correct.
Yeah. So thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can avert disaster rather than having to
Before.
rely on disaster in order to do something.
Correct.
So, thank you, folks. Anybody else for oral communications? All right. Next on our agenda is special presentations, proclamations, and announcements. And we have a presentation, North County Sheriff's Office, quarterly presentation. And it's not Rob.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Matt Chavez. I'm with the traffic unit at the Sheriff's Department, and I'm filling in for Rob Siegfried tonight. So in December, we had a total of 91 vehicle accidents in the city and about 150 citations. And then moving into January, the accidents dropped down a little bit to about 88. And citations were bumped up a little bit, and most of these to 201 moving citations. Most of the collisions occurred at the major intersections, such as 101 and Encinitas Boulevard.
Can we put up the map? I know you have maps of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Officer, in the meantime, while he's getting up the map, do you have a breakdown of what types of accidents there were?
so I don't have those percentages with me, unfortunately. This would run all the way from bicycle accidents all the way through multi-vehicle collisions, and I don't have that breakdown, unfortunately. I apologize. But it's something that I could get for next time. And like I said, it's a collection of basically bicycle crashes, solo bicycle crashes, all the way through multi-vehicle. And then I'm sure you guys look at these maps all the time, but you'll see the smaller golden circles there. That's a single accident. The medium-sized ones is 2, and then the largest circle would be 3 or more. So the only place that we have 3 or more was actually in December, right there at Encinitas and North El Camino Real. As far as updates go, that's pretty much all I got. If you guys have any questions.
Commissioner Johnson here. On the bicycle accidents, do we know which of them were human-powered bikes and which ones were e-bikes?
So again, that's not going to be recorded in what I have here, but it's something that we do document, so I could get that information for you.
Thank you.
Officer, if you could get that information for the next month, that'd be helpful, because we'd like to know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll note that down and pass that along to Rob.
All right. Thanks very much.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. If we can go, if you can scroll that up so that we can see Cardiff. Yeah. Okay. So along the coast in Cardiff, between Chesterfield and the border with Solana Beach, our road it's posted 35 miles an hour. Completely anecdotal observation is that the majority of automobiles do not follow that speed limit unless I happen to be driving in one of those lanes, and then they will. But why I guess my question is, how does the sheriff's department determine where they're going to do enforcement? Because that stretch looks like, I mean, you could pay every salary in the city with those fines with how many cars are parking. But what's the thought process about where you decide to do enforcement, and why isn't there a sheriff's deputy there every Saturday and Sunday when most of the traffic, most of the pedestrians, and most of the bicycles are all moving around and in conflict?
So are you talking about the speed there or the parking?
Speed.
Okay. So if you look at the blue dots there, just along the red line, that's the 2800 block. That's the stretch that you're speaking about. And each one of those dots indicates a traffic stop. So that's, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of this section, if you scroll all the way down under top citation locations, that's listed as our top citation location. So whenever we have availability, we're hammering that section because people fly through there.
Okay, so you're aware of the excessive speeds that people are doing there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Hansberger?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for bringing this data. I know that it has been, the commission has been wanting it, and so it's really great to see it here. I appreciate it, and I am hoping that it will continue as the first item on our agenda from our meetings continuing. I don't know if that's the plan, but I sure hope so. I have a few notes or questions. Does this accident or citation data influence where the sheriffs will place their patrols? Because as you look, you can see where the accidents are occurring. So is that data used to then drive enforcement the following month? And I'm just going to go through my questions, and then you can answer them at the end if that's, is
Okay.
that acceptable?
Yeah, I'll do my best to remember all of them.
Okay, or I can pause. I just don't want to, whatever you'd prefer.
Yeah, I'll answer that one real quick. So
Okay.
we have data analysts, and they handle both crime and collision reports. And they create essentially something like this for us so that we can then target for the next month. So that's kind of how we go about doing it. We'll have a meeting, the traffic units will all sit down together, or we'll get an email blast from Rob and from our command staff that says, hey, these are the areas that we need to be targeting. And sometimes there's more areas than, we can get to on our list. A lot of times we're able to cover those and really enforce that area.
Okay, thank you. That's great to know. I was also wondering, are there particular areas that the sheriffs are setting up on a regular basis for excess speed? It does sound like along the coast there is one location. But again, my question was, how are these decided? How often do they change? Can public request sheriff to come patrol their neighborhoods? I know that we have had, not only at our meetings, but also at city council meetings, there have been neighbors along Quail Gardens who have requested the speed to be reduced in their area. And it would be interesting to actually see what the data is for there and how many tickets, if it was being patrolled. I just was wondering, is there a way for citizens to request that? That was my second question. And then I got one more, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. The citizens can request that. So we would call it an extra patrol usually, or you can actually request specific speed enforcement in certain locations. And as far as locations that traffic deputies are going to and enforcing regularly, Manchester is a big one, right down there by the school. People picking up speed, heading downhill, going towards the freeway. Obviously, the 101, where we mentioned before, the 2800 block, a lot of people are moving pretty good right there. And then eastbound from Encinitas at North El Camino Real, as you're starting to drop down into RSF area, that's another big one that our traffic guys will hit pretty hard. Those are ones that we know of, that we go to regularly, that we see causes a change when we're there enforcing the speed. So other ones that citizens might know, we welcome requests and influence, because sometimes we might not see different things that citizens see because we're not there all the time and the citizens are. So.
And how would they go about doing that?
So most of them are call-in requests, and you'll basically talk to one of our staff members up at the front counter, and they would request an extra patrol or speed enforcement there. That would then basically just get typed up into sort of a document for us, and it's delivered to us during briefings in the morning.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And then my last question is for you guys and also kind of for city staff. I was wondering if city staff actually uses this data to drive solutions for accidents at different intersections. I noticed that in December, the data we had along Lucadia Boulevard and that whole stretch, there were a total of 10 accidents. It only listed 6, but then if you looked at different intersections, it said Lucadia and Quail Gardens, and then Lucadia and, I can't remember, there's another one on there. So that totaled 10 in December. And I know that the intersection along Quail Gardens and Lucadia Boulevard has had repeated accidents over the years. And I'm just wondering, using this data, are we gonna try to, not we, is the city gonna try to maybe change the configuration of the lights to include a left-hand turn there? Or maybe if we could have staff come up with some sort of recommendation when they see repeated accidents at intersections, and come up with maybe even just a priority of ideas for solutions, because if we could have a list of intersections that had lots of accidents and a priority of how to fix them, that could maybe get on our different funding lists. So that was just my next circling back with how are we using this data to improve and decrease accidents at high repeated accident-prone intersections?
Sure. Abe Bannigan, City Traffic Engineer. Yes, Commissioner, the data is entered, I'm not sure by whom, in the Sheriff's Office into a state database called Sweeters. Staff has access to Sweeters. Sweeters have all the information with regards to how the collision happened, the specification about the vehicle, the driver, condition of the accident, condition of the road, everything that is needed. It's basically reflected in the collision report, gets entered into that estate database, and then we have access to it. There's usually a little bit of a lag. We don't have direct access to the sheriff's database. I'm not sure if sheriff uses Sweeters or you have your own, you use Sweeters. So this info, this doesn't look like Sweeters. So you have your own system, but then you enter your information into Sweeters?
Right, so all of our information is entered into Switters. It has to be, it's a requirement. This is created by one of our internal analysts so that it's more easily interpreted.
Gotcha. Yeah, we do a similar way. We get the information from Sweeters. We have a database in our division that we analyze, sort, but to answer your second question about how it's utilized, if you recall, we had this grant from the state, which was Local Roadway Safety Plan, which it was basically the gist of it. It was analyzing all the collisions that happened in the city at the time was the past 10, 15 years. The study was conducted last year. But beyond that, what it had an extra step, which was systemically analyze the collisions and identify other locations similar to what Chair mentioned earlier that have not had those collisions, but they have the potential to experience similar situations. So that analysis identified different locations in the city that we should come up with different treatments and solutions for those. So that document is adopted. Council has approved that. The next step would be to prioritize those and fund those. So we do have the document. Obviously, with the new collisions that happen, that list can change and evolve if we redo the study 3 years from now. But at least based on the 2021, when the study was conducted, and the history of collisions at the time, we now have a list of the stuff that we know we need to do based on that.
My last question, is that shared with planning? So, for example, we have Fox Point coming in right there on Lucadia Boulevard and Quail Gardens. Is that shared with the planning department so that when that developer is building their property, hopefully we can ask for them to pay for the upgrade to the signal if it's warranted? Or I just was wondering how those two interact, and because it would
no.
be. Seemed like it'd be
Good
great.
question. Seems very reasonable. Unfortunately, the state law mandates that it has to be direct correlation between the mitigation that is mandated by the Development Services Department for a project with this impact. So because of what has happened, especially safety, because of the fact that there is no reason to prove that this project is going to make this worse or has direct contribution to this situation, we cannot ask for mitigations about existing situations. If the project adds a certain number of vehicles to an intersection and now we need to add a signal there, we can justify it. This is your situation with this number of extra trips. Now the left turn needs its own traffic signal, so you have to spend $300,000 and modify the signal and build a new signal. With safety, there's no objective way of saying if you add 200 trips to this intersection, you'll add 3 injuries. Because of the fact that the rubric is the algorithm is not there to connect the traffic impact of a project to safety, we cannot condition any project to improve safety before being constructed. We can ask for a additional right turn pocket somewhere, left turn, capacity, objective improvements. We can ask for those if, based on their traffic study, we can prove there is direct significant impact. And there are thresholds for that. There's a whole criteria. It's called traffic impact analysis guidelines. Each development submits a study. It's evaluated. There's a criteria. There is significance threshold, and how they have to mitigate those potential impacts. But unfortunately, not about safety.
Sheriff, is this data available for any citizen to download? Let's say if they want to run regressions, look at, this is fantastic, this visualization, but clearly I think where the mind wanders is what are the trends over time? How has this changed as different traffic patterns have changed? Is this something that any citizen can come in and download and run their own analysis on?
I don't think so, but I'm not positive. I'll have to ask and find out for you.
Yeah, I'd be very curious on that. I get a lot of questions around that, and I don't know where to point people as it relates to that. Plenty of people are technical enough to run this data. That's one question. The second question is there any update on the hit and run death that occurred in January?
Unfortunately, I don't think that we have anybody in custody for that. We still have investigators working on every single possible lead. I just asked about that on the way over here, and it's still an ongoing sort of investigation. So that's kind of where we're at with that, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Commissioner Standifer.
Thank you. Can we scroll the map up to the to show Rancho Santa Fe Road? Out there. I see a number of citations, which I assume are all for speeding down the hill there at where Rancho Santa Fe turns into Manchester and meets with Encinitas Boulevard. But I see nothing along the stretch of Rancho Santa Fe to the northern border of the city. Is that area patrolled regularly?
So that one is patrolled regularly, and sorry about that. It is patrolled regularly. It looks like we did have a dip in both December and January for citations there. Yeah, looks like
This is January.
around
This
four
one is-
maybe. Yeah, about 4 tickets back there potentially. Well, between 1 and 4 it looks like.
Okay, and that looks like it's the intersection, well, it disappeared.
Well, they're the same. This one is for December. This one is for January.
Okay,
The golden ones are, the donuts are for collisions. The blue dot is for the citations.
and that looks like it was halfway before 7th Street there. Observation there, speeding is not so much an issue between Encinitas Boulevard and up to Camino del Norte or even to Lone Jack Road because of all the stop signs.
Right.
But the stop signs are mostly not observed.
Right. There are a couple stop signs back there that people ignore, we'll say, or California coast right through. And most of the citations that are given back there, like you said, are not for speed. They're for ignoring the stop signs. They're for cell phone ticket violations. They're for, there's a cut through back there. I can't remember the name of the street. It escapes me at the moment, but you can't drive through there during, what is it?
Cold Ranch.
Coal Ranch. So you can't drive through there during rush hour in the morning and then in the evening.
Right.
And that's what most of our tickets are for, is people trying to cut by all the traffic. So not much speed because everybody's bumper to bumper.
Right.
But, yeah.
And we will be discussing this road this evening as well. Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Actually, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I have one
Commissioner
more
Rose.
question. Is there any active proposals around putting in any automated speed and red light infraction cameras in the city that you know of?
No, as you probably know, we had a red light camera enforcement system in the city down the years, which City Council voted to stop the program, I believe, in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I want to thank you for this information. I think it's very helpful, and it'd be great to have it on a consistent basis, so thank you very much. Just for the commission and the public to know, how many traffic patrol officers does Encinitas have?
Let's see, I'll have to count them. We have 4 on each side of the week that are in traffic cars, so eight there, and then we have another, let's see, 6 or 7 motorcycles. So there's a fair amount of traffic. This is the largest traffic unit that we have in the county for the sheriff's department.
For like Del Mar, Solana Beach, Encinitas, and everything?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Could you use more?
I mean, we could always use more. That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully if any residents are concerned about this, they can appeal to the city council to grant more money for more traffic services, which I think would be great. And then one other comment. I know words matter. I would prefer to not see the word accidents in these traffic reports. They're either collisions or crashes. Accidents are like when a tree falls down on you when you're walking by.
Right.
But accidents are not when a car hits a bicycle or anything. I know it's a minor thing, but I think it helps create a sense of seriousness if it's not called an accident. Accidents are very easy to, ignore, I guess is the word. It doesn't seem as serious. So, but again, thank you for this information, and please give our thanks to Rob. He's retiring at the end of this month, I believe.
Yeah, are we in March now? No, not yet. In
Not
March.
yet.
He retires in March.
Okay. Well, thank him for his service. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, will do.
So thank you for coming and doing this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to move to action items.
Excuse me,
and-
Chair. Excuse me, Chair. We have our fire chief, Josh Gordon, here tonight, and our fire marshal, Hans Schmidt. We weren't sure until when this was being put together that how the scheduling would work with their presence. The fact that we have them here tonight, and we are working together a lot more than before these past couple of months for different projects that we have in the city. So we thought it would be a good idea, since we have a new fire chief in the city, for him to kind of introduce himself to you and mention
Great.
a few words about how we're working together.
Great.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sorry for my lack of a uniform. I was at another council workshop today, so they wanted me to dress
It was a long
business.
one, I bet.
We only had to be there for half the day, so council had it a little worse than we did. Yeah, so my name is Josh Gordon. I grew up here, born and raised here in Encinitas. Unfortunately, I live in Carlsbad now because my wife won that battle. She grew up in Carlsbad. But long history of Levenheim roots. My family was some of the German immigrants that came in the late 1800s, and so I have a lot of love and passion for this city. I've only been the fire chief for 2 months now, but I do know that the traffic calming measures and the flow pattern and how we look at the city as it moves is very important. Like Abe said, we're definitely working a lot more with traffic and engineering and trying to make it a little easier for them to understand where we're coming from when we're asking about, why we're putting in speed bumps or stop signs, because it does slow our emergency response down too. And I know you guys understand that. So happy to be here, happy to work with you guys, and I'm here for any questions.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Do commissioners have any questions or comments for the new fire chief? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for coming. I think a little later on, the issue of evacuation is going to come up in our discussion around some restriping changes and things like that. So I'm sure you'll be very busy interacting with residents and everything about some of those issues. So thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will turn to action items, and the first one is Sunset Drive traffic calming. And Abe?
Oh, thank you, Chair.
What's going on? Thank you.
This is a continuation of an item that we brought to Commission last year in September. As you recall, we had a few different alternatives with regards to Sunset Drive, how we could improve the roadway. We had surveys conducted, and speeding was noticed, and also a high level of cut-through traffic vehicles coming, especially from Vulcan and Orpheus, not going to the intersection of Vulcan and Orpheus, and instead deciding to cut through using Sunset. The survey that was conducted, if I recall correctly, showed about 1/3 of the vehicles were not either residing on Sunset or using Sunset to get to their residence or their place of business, and they were just using Sunset to get to Vulcan from Orpheus or vice versa. The alternatives that we had were about traffic calming, narrowing down the lane, providing a edge of the road walkway for the pedestrians due to lack of sidewalk there. And the biggest measure was to add a neighborhood circle similar to the one at Eolus at the intersection of Sunset and Orpheus. That design was blessed by the Commission, and following our communication with our fire department, it was our fire marshal's decision conducting a fire department's evaluation and discussing it with their operations team that this is not the best solution for that location because of how sensitive that location is for Station 5 on Orpheus 3. And because of that, we are now back here with a second alternative on that, I guess, combo box of ours that we had. So these are the stuff that won't affect our fire department. Addition of a edge line, addition of a ped walkway by just putting some signs and some pavement legends. What is new is that instead of that old circle, not old, but the circle that was originally blessed by Commission, this is the second solution that we had at that meeting that was also accepted by the Commission, but the preference of the neighborhood and the community was the circle. But we brought it back to see if the Commission has an opinion about this, and or if this is something that the Commission is recommending staff move forward with. This is basically converting the intersection to a actual T intersection instead of the current layout where there is like a free right, and even moving south there is like a free left. This I don't know if my mouse is visible here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this triangular area here will be closed using bollards, and the roadway Sunset will bend and create a 90-degree angled intersection. So if a vehicle is coming south on Orpheus, they will no longer be able to go without slowing down into Sunset. There is still the possibility of cut-through if they really want to. They can come here and then slow down and turn left onto Sunset and then go toward Vulcan. But with this, we're taking away that possibility of turning into Sunset without slowing down at all. And similarly, it applies to the right turners. Right now, a lot of people, because of how free flow this is, they can easily just pass the stop sign without stopping or just rolling. But with this 90-degree angle that is created, most probably there is a better chance of everybody abiding by this stop sign and waiting to get a gap from northbound Orpheus. There is a little bit of a side distance limitation at this corner, especially when people walk on Sunset and they want to get to Orpheus. With these 3 bollards here, we want to create a deflection so that vehicles won't really hog the edge of the roadway. So if there is a pedestrian in their blind spot, there's no danger there. And yeah, a little bit of modification with the sign location and some striping modification, extension of this double yellow here to bring this intersection around here. We don't anticipate the necessity to remove these parking spaces, but we've already conveyed the message at one of the community meetings that there might be the need for one or two of these spaces to go, but I don't see it happening right away. But yeah, this is basically in lieu of that neighborhood circle that was presented to the commission at our September meeting. With that, I'm open to any questions if commission has any questions or suggestions.
Thank you, Abe. Commissioners, any comments? We'll just go down the row then.
Start with her.
Commissioner Trouth.
Yeah, so is this a temporary solution to put all these bollards up? I mean, is there like an ultimate solution to do something more enhanced?
Not at the moment. Unfortunately, all of our quick build projects utilize these, I guess, less cost prohibitive measures. We do not, because if this becomes a concrete project, a lot of other factors come into play, the design, the drainage, the stormwater, BMP. Yeah, the whole construction becomes a different story. These are all meant to be quick build projects.
So for your department, this is kind of the project and.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I like this solution. I think it is going to slow traffic, and I think it's going to stop people from turning left onto Sunset and using it as a cut-through. In fact, I will say that already with the raised sidewalk that you've put down at the bottom of Orpheus, that really allows traffic to exit Orpheus safely onto Vulcan. It provides a kind of a slow buffer there. And I used to be one of the people that would turn left on Sunset and then exit down and use the other part of Sunset to get onto Vulcan. And now I go straight down Orpheus because it's just safer to get out onto Vulcan. So I really like the raised crosswalk that you've put down there. I think that has helped to slow traffic and make it a safer egress onto Vulcan. And I think this will hopefully reduce traffic in the neighborhood, and the neighbors on Sunset will be happy with the solution. I also do like the bollards and providing that safe space on the corner where the current stop sign is. I run that neighborhood a lot, and I think that's going to be a nice, safe little pocket for turning. So thank you. I see this as a good solution.
Commissioner Gross? No? Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time last year talking about this intersection, and I guess it's problematical. Now, is Orpheus a circulation element street or a residential street?
I do believe Orpheus is a classified road, if I'm not mistaken.
It's classified. That means that it's not a 25-mile-an-hour residential street, correct?
No, we have a local classification on our circulation element map. So when a street is classified, doesn't necessarily mean it's a major road or arterial. It can still be classified as a local road. I guess technicality is if a roadway is classified, I think we had this discussion once at the commission meeting, it's just on that state map that shows it as a circulation road, and then it means that it needs to have a speed survey to back up the speed limit on that road for it to be enforceable. You cannot use prima facie 25 mile per hour, but many of our local roads with a speed survey are still justifying a 25 mile per hour. So they might, I think Orpheus is 25 if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Because my thought was if we're getting too much traffic on Orpheus, we could just block the road off in the middle as an alternative to the stop sign you've suggested. I think the stop sign is a good idea, but once we have our mobility element in place, some of these pure residential streets that are being used as cut-through ought to have means to slow the traffic considerably, and turning them into, turning a through street into a pair of one-way streets that, or a pair of streets that can't go through might force more traffic onto the major circulation roads.
Okay.
Yeah, well, with our circulation element update, obviously, these kind of reclassifications can be considered.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that up as an off-the-wall suggestion, but I think the stop sign that you have shown on this map is probably a good solution for now. And I'm disappointed that we weren't able to get a roundabout there, which would have been an even better solution.
Thank you. Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Abe, for this analysis. I think it's a good idea because I think a right angle intersection is safer than an oblique one. And anything you can do to slow down traffic will reduce the attractiveness of cut-through traffic. So given that statement, then I'm wondering why you don't implement something similar at the intersection between Vulcan and Sunset, in other words, the other end of this cut-through.
Yeah.
Because that is also an oblique intersection and could use the same application. Because that one's actually more susceptible to high-speed cut-through for northbound traffic onto Sunset from Vulcan. This would be in the afternoon, I imagine.
If I'm not mistaken, with the rear side of Vulcan, we did add a tighter turn there. There was the discussion about adding some bollards to prevent that free flow northbound move onto Sunset, which we are working on it. Our main concern, I think I mentioned it before, is the bicycle activity there. To add the bollards, it might cause a bicyclist hit those bollards. But we did, with our striping on Vulcan last year, tighten that, not to this level, because the width that we have here is a lot more than the entrance to Sunset on the Vulcan side. We have a very huge opening here, would allow us to create that 90. I think on the south side, on Vulcan side, we don't have that much width to create that big bend to form a 90, but we did tighten it up. We can certainly look into it to see if we can tighten it even more, but I feel we added that white edge line on the southeast corner to create that 90 degree, make it closer to the right angle.
Okay.
It's not abided by vehicle, they go over it, but we can use bollards to fix that.
Yeah, I think that'd be better because white lines I don't think are necessarily that effective at controlling vehicles, especially if they're looking to save a second, which they might do by cutting the line. But I think that would be safer as a right angle. But I know thank you for letting me know that you've already looked into that.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Standifer, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you for this. I like this new configuration of this intersection. I do have a question for our fire chief and everything. If the original or the initial plan and design did not meet fire department standards, this one does? This is something you guys can live with?
We'll have to discuss that with traffic. I don't believe I've seen this design. We did see the original design, though.
But you haven't seen this one?
No, I have not.
So you haven't been able to evaluate whether or not this is going to be adequate for you?
No, that's correct. I will talk to traffic, though, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can discuss this. The reason that our anticipation when we design these, when there is no vertical deflection that would slow down our fire department, these are flexible posts that if fire apparatus wants to run through them, they can just easily go through them with minimal impact. That's why for these smaller ones we have. I was under the impression that our fire marshal has seen this, but we can certainly discuss this furthermore.
Yeah, and the question I was going to ask him was, when I saw this, are those bollards collapsible, something that we can navigate over? That'd be the
So
most
if they are
important issue here.
flexible, no problem.
More than likely, it wouldn't be an issue, yes.
Okay, okay. I would hate to approve something and then find out later that the fire department has issues with it, so,
No, that was an oversight on our side.
okay. I also want to build on Commissioner Wong's question or suggestion of putting flexible bollards at the other end of Sunset and Vulcan. I think back in November, I actually brought in videos of cars cutting that edge line and recommending that some bollards go in there. So I don't know if anybody remembers those videos, but yeah, all you have to do is sit there, stand there, watching everything, and people are cutting that corner. So if we're going to go ahead and put bollards in at this intersection, put them at the other intersection, because basically the residents, my understanding is the residents of Sunset were complaining about traffic speeds on Sunset. And originally they wanted speed cushions. Now, in my mind, speed cushions are a lot less disruptive and probably less expensive than modifying the road and putting up, vertical collapsible bollards and everything, when basically all they wanted was speed cushions. But evidently, according to the report, speed cushions did not meet the requirements for the first tier traffic management program. And I think that's unfortunate because I think the residents want the speed cushions. I think arbitrarily developing a list of things that have to be met is a disservice to the people. They wanted to have speed cushions, and now they're not getting speed cushions, which is to slow down traffic. So I think traffic speeds will still be an issue between this intersection and Sunset Vulcan. And I just think it's unfortunate that the residents couldn't get their speed cushions. I don't think the speed cushions were an issue for the fire department because my understanding is that fire trucks and everything can span them. They don't have to bump over them. Is that still correct?
That's correct, but we still need space on either side. So if our road distance isn't enough and we still have to go through the middle, we have parking on one side or another car coming to the other side. So it still would slow us down enough to where it would affect our response times. So in that area, the roads do get pretty narrow. So we need the extra space.
Okay, so speed cushions are a no-go on that stretch.
I believe so. I'm trying to remember back. I don't know if I was part of this one or not, but, and Hans, I don't know if you remember this one?
If I may, Chair, one reason that this wasn't, I don't think it was even discussed with our fire marshal, is that our warrants are pretty clear where we have 5 criteria, arbitrarily or not, they were approved by commission and council. It does talk about speeding issue, and that's the first main criteria among the 5. The other 4 are the physical characteristics of the road. If there's a sidewalk, not. Bike lane, no. If there is a major pedestrian generator, if there is a school, a park, a hospital, something like that. The geometry of the roadway, if there is limited sight distance, visibility, a crest, a horizontal or vertical alignment. So these criteria are there, and the location needs to meet 3 out of 5 if there isn't a speeding issue, meaning if the first warrant is met. Now, on this location, the speed warrant was not met because of the stop sign that we have further down at Ocean, forgot the name.
Ocean View, I think?
Ocean View. And this is stop sign here, although it doesn't apply to vehicles coming south from Orpheus. But because of the 2 stop signs, the speed survey showed that there is no major speeding issue here. The issue was the cut-through and the fact that most of the speeders are the cut-through traffic. But overall, the 85th percentile was not high enough to meet that speeding issue warrant.
Okay,
So we didn't even talk to our fire marshal about this.
okay. Commissioner Hansberger?
Are you done?
Yeah, for now.
My last question was for the fire marshal or it's just, when we look at these quick build projects, we neighbors and me personally too, really like the roundabout solution. I feel like it keeps traffic flowing and it just seems like a great solution all around. And it's really nice that the city is now trying to do these quick builds. So as we sit here as a commission and propose them for different areas, I would love to know what your criteria is for acceptable, when is it acceptable and when isn't? Like, what is the criteria on that? Because I live really near the quick build that's in Leucadia on Eolis and Hillcrest, and I think that's working great. Abe did a speed study to show it slows traffic. It's made the intersection safer. So what is it that you guys like about those, don't like about them? How do we get them approved? How do we build them or suggest them that they're acceptable for you guys for response times and safety?
Yeah, so that's definitely been the question we've been asked a lot lately. And so one of the first things we look at is if it's a major artery of our response times, not necessarily a major artery of the city, but where our fire stations are and where our fire engines and ambulances respond to. So that's one of the first things we look at. Next, we're looking at how it affects the safety. Does the fire engine fit? Does it meet all of what Abe's requirements are? And then also with response times. So we have our city council's adopted a response time standard, right? So we have to meet this standard when we respond to emergency calls. So if it's going to affect that, we have to look at that. Now, roundabouts and the speed cushions and stop signs, we are meeting together now. I know before it's kind of been just a no, but we are taking into consideration all of those events now and looking to see if we can make it work. I think the Eolis and Andrew is a good one. We walked out there and we said, hey, we can figure out a solution here, and we're working with traffic now to come up with that. So that's pretty much a criteria we're using. A lot of it has to do with safety also, but the speed is really what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just propose them, and then you guys will analyze and say if there's a fire station that's too close, it won't work, and then we'll go back and figure that out. But yeah.
We are working on trying to get like some kind of criteria that we can give out so that like, hey, this is probably a no-go. We're not going to go. We don't want to waste your time getting a petition or any of that if we do know that these streets are no. So we are working on kind of coming up with a message for the city management and you guys.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I really do appreciate you guys working with the citizens to help us, make mobility safer for walkers and cyclers. It's really appreciated.
Any other commissioners, comments or questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Wong?
So first of all, thank you, Chair, for reminding me about the video which you showed. So that, if you remember, Abe, that video showed cars cutting through on Sunset and the suggestion of having bollards. And I believe that bollards would slow down traffic. And taking into account your suggestion that maybe bollards would be obstructions of bicycles, I don't think they'd be. I think it'd be preferable to have slower traffic rather than having to dodge bollards. It's not a problem to dodge bollards on a bicycle. So I think you should consider that rather than possible objection from bikes. I say that with lots of experience on a bike.
No, we are aware of that situation, of that intersection, the need for making it a more close to 90-degree angled intersection. That's on our radar.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? So I guess, I'm sorry? We do have one public. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yes, please, yes.
We have Barb Sands.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. This is Barb Sands. That was quite entertaining for me to hear that. I'm actually a resident on Sunset Drive. My husband and I lived there for about 30-some years, and we've really watched probably in the last 20 years, some real safety issues on our street. We live on the second house on the east side of Sunset, very close to this intersection that we've all been discussing. And I happen to be a mother. I've raised kids on this street. We've noticed some very serious safety issues. It's a growing concern for all of us. For the last 18 years, we've worked with a variety of different city council members, as well as some of the criteria that has unfolded over the last couple of years. We've tried to meet some of those criteria. We do have parents picking up kids around Orpheus Park, but all of us are really concerned about safety and walking on the street and biking on the street. We now have a new family on the street. We have a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7, and a 10-year-old. It's not just a bunch of old farts that live on Sunset. So we're really concerned. It's not just, it is a pass-through street for many people that come up from Vulcan. I would prefer to see ballards at the end of Vulcan beginning to come up Sunset. I've walked there, and I've had to jump a couple yards because people are cutting that area, to your point. And so I think we've been through a couple recommendations with Abe and his team, and I really appreciate all the effort that you've put into this. I think I contacted you right around COVID time. You came out, you met with us in the rain. But we're still at a point where we were 18 years ago. We have absolutely nothing. Many of us prefer to have the roundabout, both on the lower side coming up from Vulcan to Ocean View and Sunset. That's a huge, huge intersection. That's where these 3 kids are going to be living, 3, 5, and 7, very shortly. And so we did discuss the roundabout on this side, on the Orpheus Sunset side, and all of us had high hopes that this would control and minimize some of these cars that are flying through the street during really busy times. This is our concern. We can't get out of our driveways. Some of us, like myself included, have very long driveways. You can't see then when a car is whipping by at 45 miles an hour. So the criteria has changed over the years, but many of the citizens on the street have not. We're just more concerned about public safety. Again, many of us walk, we have baby carriages, we bike, there's older folks on this street as well, so it really is a growing concern. So anything that the city and the commission and Abe's team can do to help not only slow down the folks that are flying through the street, and provide more safety for the residents. I'll speak on behalf of the citizens. Thank you.
Okay. Did you get all your thoughts? Because we have time if you want a couple more minutes.
No, I
Okay.
think the message is pretty
Okay.
clear. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Seeing these plans, do you think that this is a step in the correct
I think this
direction?
Thank you for asking me that question. I think it's a Band-Aid. I think what we're going to find are a lot of people that are going to just fly through because they're going to notice there's no stop sign there anymore.
But
Now,
there
if
is a stop, right?
but there's no stop sign. They may still want to fly through. I walk up and down that street constantly, and I bike up and down that street, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of response we get. As one of the commissioners had pointed out, when you enter Sunset from Vulcan, people don't adhere to a lot of the what's on the road. They just fly through. Again, it's a cut-through street or uses a cut-through street. And it's becoming more difficult because many of us are renovating these homes and building new. And so there's lots of construction. So I'm real concerned about some of the little people on the street and some of the older folks on the street and our safety. But I do think this is a Band-Aid. But, you know, after 18 years of constantly asking, what can we do to slow down the traffic, we'd like to see something happen to.
Even if it's a Band-Aid at this moment?
Even if it's a Band-Aid, I think that we could come back to Abe and maybe the fire department and come up with another solution. But we all had hoped that this would be a roundabout. This was one that we came together on. So we were very disappointed that it's going to be this Band-Aid for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I also have a question.
Yes.
Sarah. So thank you for coming. I appreciate having someone, a resident, who knows what the traffic situation really is there. So we've talked about cars and bikes so far, but not so much pedestrians. And given that that's near the school, crossing at Orpheus, do you have an idea of how much pedestrian traffic, students, for instance, walk in those
That's
roads?
great.
Or
That's a
do
great question.
Are they just too scared? I mean, it is dangerous with that many cars. So I imagine that parents may not want to have their kids walking on the streets with no sidewalks.
I understand the question. In that area where there is Orpheus Park, there are sidewalks there. And I've watched a lot of the parents, all the parents then, are there half an hour earlier parked in their cars. So when the kids come up from Paul Ecke, they just run to their cars. So it really doesn't impact Sunset. What impacts Sunset are parents like I used to be, where you're trying to get to your school to pick up your kid on time. And so a lot of these cars are using Sunset to pass through to get to Orpheus, and they're speeding. They're either late or whatever have you. But as far as pedestrian safety relative to children, I don't think that's an issue. We're more concerned about Sunset, pedestrians, bicyclists, and we've seen, as everywhere in our community, an uptick in motorized, some of the teenagers on their e-bikes. But we have a vice chancellor of the university on our street, and she wrote me a private email and said, when are we ever going to be able to do anything on our street? My husband and I have just purchased e-bikes, and we're afraid to get that out of our driveway. So,
So do you think the fact that you don't see students walking to Paul Ecke on Sunset, and is it Ocean View that curls around at the top? Is that because there are just not many students who live there, or is it because they're too intimidated to walk along those routes? Because if I was a student, I mean, if I live within 3 blocks of school, 5 blocks, whatever, I think it'd be great to walk there if you're safe. So the fact that you don't see very many students, is that because there aren't any students who live there, or just they're too afraid to do so?
I'll just state my opinion. I don't think they're afraid to do so. There are a lot of kids that go to Paul Ecke, that get on their bikes, and they go in different directions. We don't have a lot of Paul Ecke student ages on Sunset at this time. That may change with the 3, 5, and 7, and 10-year-old, but not at this time. They usually just run to their parents' cars, so we don't see that kind of activity on Sunset per se.
Okay, well, that's on Sunset, but it also goes around to Ocean. Is it Ocean View that goes around the top of Sunset?
That's right, yes, yeah. I can't speak to how many kids might be going to Paul Ecke on Ocean View, but I understand your question now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I live in the neighborhood, and so does James, and we have a lot of families that ride bikes and walk to Paul Ecke. I'm not on Sunset, but in all of our neighborhoods, they are riding their bicycles and walking. And yes, we don't have sidewalks, and yes, it is sometimes a little unsafe, but I think for the most part, people are happy to walk and ride if they live close enough. So just to answer your question, there are quite a lot of children all over the neighborhood every day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would stay on it and have Marty and Sandy come to meetings and go to city council meetings also, like Sandy and Marty Brown.
Understood. I'm
Yeah.
just representing the team, so to speak, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson here. I guess the problem with the roundabout was that it slows down vehicles because of the hardscape. Suppose we just painted the roundabout on the street and put in some flexible bollards. Would that satisfy the fire department?
I know Abe has some history on that, so I'll let him answer that.
Yes, we did have this option of using these flexible posts and a combination, I guess, of some flexible posts and adding the wheel stops only in, I guess, the westerly edge of the circle, because the westerly edge would minimize the impact to our fire apparatus. But overall, after discussing this with our fire marshal, it was decided that it still impacts the fire response to the level that it's better not to take that route at the moment.
So I'm sorry, I didn't understand or quite catch that, but in your report, it said that the fire department stated they were opposed to the traffic circle design.
Correct.
Okay. And that still remains your position.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the running over these bollards, these flexible posts in this design would happen rarely when the fire apparatus is using Sunset. But the circle would have been on Orpheus and would be continuously have to be hit, I guess, if we wanted to use flexible posts because of the fact that Orpheus is frequently used. So it would be a little different with the assumption of, okay, well, the fire apparatus can just run these over. I mean, this ones will be probably run over, I don't know, very few times a year. But if we put the circle with posts on Orpheus, I think with the level of impact they would be getting from the apparatus, we would have to renew those bollards every week.
Okay, all right. Thank you for comments and questions. I think our recommended action is to support the striping changes and bollards that enhance safety and mobility on Sunset Drive. So I'll entertain a motion to do the recommended action if someone wants to make a motion.
I'll make that motion with the provision that we look into changing the intersection at Sunset and Vulcan, as we've discussed, in order to make it more of a right angle and bollards.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Trout. So the motion is to support these striping changes on the, with the caveat that the flexible bollards are also placed at the intersection of Vulcan and Sunset along that edge line that was recently painted. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Any other questions or comments before we vote?
I just was going to say, could we maybe just ask that it's looked into as opposed to making it mandatory that they're put in? Because sometimes when that happens, then this isn't going to get, I'm just worried that this won't move forward because that will hold it up. So that's my only concern.
Well, I'm also concerned that if you make it optional, that generally means it won't get done.
Abe,
Well, it will,
would it matter? Does it make any difference if we ask for those flexible bollards? I mean, can they be added in easily, like just with the pen from you?
Yeah, my only concern, which still is the concern, is that that impact to the bike riders that are on the side. The fact that we would have to do white on white would make them a little bit harder to notice, and they're on the edge of the road. On Vulcan, we do not have a bike lane, so a lot of bikers use the edge of the road. They don't ride on the center. Now we're having these bollards. I mean, I probably can order shorter bollards that won't catch a bicycle handle, but it's still, there is that concern. I would discuss this with our risk management team to see how they feel about it. But that was my hesitance. That was the reason I wasn't so sure about. It was on our radar. Maybe we can find, maybe we can put the bollards more into the center, into the Sunset instead of putting them on Vulcan. Maybe just to start the bollards on Sunset and not to bring them on Vulcan. Maybe that can help for cars not to kind of go freely into Sunset. Let me look into this. I would prefer if the motion was for staff to bring back to commission in the March meeting some sort of a recommendation or solution for that matter. But to your question, as we discussed this before, the recommendations of the Mobility Commission are in no way binding, so it won't make the city liable if I don't do it. It won't make the city, liable if I do it. It's an advisory vote, so feel free to add it to the motion. It doesn't stop us from doing the first piece of it, as Commissioner Hansberger mentioned. We could still do the first part if we feel, if our risk management says, Abe, it's better to, not to move forward with the second piece of the recommendation, or if our city engineer decides it's to the benefit of the city not to do the second piece, we would still go forward with the first piece, if that's
Yes, I understand, but our actions are optional. I understand that because we are advisory. But I have two suggestions. Perhaps one would be to ask a bike group such as Encinitas Bike Walk or Bike Walk Encinitas, whatever it's called, what their opinions, the members' opinions would be. And second would be to install them and ask for advice, whether there are any complaints, whether it causes problems or not. Because as a bike rider myself, I don't think it caused problems, but I'm only one. So either of
Understood.
those would be, we're getting feedback.
Yeah, I'm fine, Chair, with the motion either way. That's, yeah, it doesn't, it wouldn't, yeah, to Commissioner Hansberger's, we can still do it. Yeah, feel free to vote yes on this. That's fine.
I got a little sidetracked on this motion. The motion was for us to support the striping changes and recommend, or only if the other bollards are done at sunset. Whoever made the motion can explain that.
Well, as Abe so capably pointed out, everything we say is advisory and optional. So if we say we approve this restriping at Sunset and Orpheus with provision that we also do the same with bollards at Sunset and Vulcan, then that will be our recommendation. It will only be a recommendation since we're only advisory. So that's my advice, is that we
Okay.
say approve with this provision, and it's still advisory. It's still
Okay.
optional.
Everything we do is advisory, I
It
understand.
is. I just do want to, I'm hesitant because this bit me for the Hygeia roundabout. We came to Traffic and Commission 6 years ago and asked for them to add sidewalks along. That roundabout was completely funded and about to be constructed. And because we asked for sidewalks on both sides, when it got to council, they sent it back to design. It went back to design. And as I'm sure you're aware, that roundabout is still not constructed. So I am just always happier to move a motion forward cleanly and then ask for whatever else it is we're trying to get done in a separate motion. But you're making this motion, I will defer to you. But just so you know, that is always my hesitance with something I see I want completed on a commission or even with council, that I feel like if we separate them, we know this for sure will happen, and then the second issue can come along. But that's just.
When nothing we advise is for sure going to happen.
I understand.
think
I
so.
understand, but council can go with it and decide not to, or send it back and ask for redesign, and then this neighborhood is still waiting on the initial bollards getting put up. So that's all.
I'm not the expert on Robert's Rules of Orders and everything else like that, but if the motion is to accept this with to install bollards at Sunset and Vulcan, I would like to add something else, and that is to relook at putting in speed cushions along that stretch. I don't know if you're open to modifying your motion on that.
Yes, of course, that is, again, we're advisory, and we already heard from the fire chief on that.
Okay.
So
But
I'm happy to include that, but with the understanding that the fire chief has ultimate say.
yeah. Well, the fire chief basically said there are no chance of speed cushions on that road. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wasn't involved with the first run on that, so I would have to take a look at it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's stay with your original motion and the original second, and we'll go ahead and vote. Okay? Amanda, did you follow that? All right. Okay, so all in favor of supporting the striping changes and bollards and that enhance safety and mobility on Sunset Drive, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Let the record show there was no opposition for that. Well, that took longer than it should have, but I think there are some very good points, and I appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate the speaker, and I do encourage you folks and the residents on there to stay on it. There's been a lot of changes in Encinitas in the last 18 years you've been asking for this, but I think in the last few years, I think it's safe to say that a lot of improvements have been made, and they will continue to be made with the people we have on council and on staff. So it may be slow, but I think it'll be better, hopefully. Okay, next item is, this is Rancho Santa Fe Road Safety and Mobility Enhancements. And the recommended action is to recommend to City Council, or recommend that the City Council approve proposed striping changes. And this is for Rancho Santa Fe Road safety and mobility enhancements. Do we have any public speakers on this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, but we'll go ahead and do public speakers after the report. So take it away, Abe.
Thank you, Chair. The fact that we have several new commissioners, I think it would be good to go through the background on this a little bit to kind of clarify how this was initiated. About 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, former Councilmember Mosca brought an item, a council member initiated item to the City Council to ask council direct staff to analyze the flow on Rancho Santa Fe Road, north of Encinitas Boulevard. Mainly, the initiation of this was due to complaints of congestion, as was brought up earlier today during the commission meeting when we had our sheriff's office presentation. That was the initiation, the whole congestion during peak periods there. Council at that point contributed $50,000 to staff to hire a consultant and evaluate the mobility along the corridor to see how it can be optimized and done more efficiently. The idea at that point was to find out what the bottlenecks are, what is causing that delay, and find a solution, and also at the same time opportunities for traffic calming and safety enhancements in areas that were potential issues. Staff hired a consultant, and former Councilmember Mosco contacted the community and formed a Rancho Santa Fe task force that worked with the staff and with the consultant. We had multiple meetings, and during the process of the study, this was morphed into more of a traffic management, traffic calming project than the mobility enhancement part of it, which was the original goal and intent. The community's input through that task force was that we are fine with the congestion, we're fine with all these stop signs that are causing this delay, and we do not like the idea of traffic signals that can enhance the mobility because of the community character and the aesthetic impact of these potential circles. So it morphed into another study that had some solutions in there that were mostly about traffic calming, traffic management, and some roundabouts, some crosswalks, some pedestrian enhancements, and those potential improvements were taken to the City Council on May of 2021. Council approved that final study, and it wasn't budgeted at that point, so it was shelved. Last year, during the council budget sessions, the city was able to set aside $100,000 to implement some pieces of that traffic study that was conducted. Part of those were a few crosswalks, some corner improvements at these crosswalks, and also some striping work along Rancho Santa Fe, which included lane narrowing and some edge of the roadway enhancement. On the current city's active transportation master plan that was approved by the City Council, I believe in 2017, I want to say 17, maybe 18, Rancho Santa Fe is classified as a bike lane, so it is supposed to have dedicated bike lanes on each side. There is also the Trail 82 that is approved design, very close to being fully funded, not yet in construction completely, on the east side of Rancho Santa Fe, starting from Encinitas Boulevard, going all the way up to El Camino del Norte, and then turning right onto El Camino del Norte, which I think becomes a different trail number. Because of the limited width that we had on Rancho Santa Fe, we knew we could not get to the full bike lane on both sides of the roadway. The majority of the roadway from Encinitas all the way to El Camino, the width is not there to have bike lanes. Due to the conversations that happened with the task force, the consultant recommended a redesign which would form a edge of the roadway walkway, meaning you narrow down the lanes on the roadway at the remaining width of the roadway, kind of like what we have on Vulcan, which I know in some areas is pretty tight, but I guess that's the best we could have with the width of the Vulcan that we had. Similarly with Rancho Santa Fe, our active transportation plan has this type 3 street edge enhancement, which calls for in areas that you do not have a walkway, you can form a walkway on the edge of the road by just painting and some signage and pavement marking. Now, obviously, this is not the perfect world. It would not prevent vehicles from entering that area, but at least there is a place to walk compared to just having a wide lane where you still walk on the same location. A pedestrian will still be at the same place, but there's no delineation to clarify for a driver that they should expect pedestrians there. With this concept in mind and the improvements that were recommended in that traffic study that was approved by council, we started implementing the crosswalks. There was multiple crosswalks implemented there at Olive Crest. There was crosswalks improved at El Camino del Norte, at Lone Jack. So we marked all those. We improved the ramps. So all those, I think about 9 crosswalks were added, continental crosswalks. Multiple curb ramps were installed. And tonight we're here to receive input from the commission on restriping Rancho Santa Fe. Now this is where it gets tricky. We do have the, let me open the striping. This is the proposed striping. There is still a lot of elements of this that can be modified. Nothing here is really written in stone. This is why we're here to discuss. To give you the idea of what we were after, we wanted to make all the lanes 10 and then utilize the space remaining in the best way possible. What we tried to do was to see if there is a walkway on the edge of the road. In the beginning, going from Encinitas north, because of the fact that trail is coming to the east side, we did not leave a lot of room on the east side. We tried to leave most of the width remaining on the west side for it to perform as some sort of a walkway. Again, the type 3 street edge enhancement that our active transportation plan recommends. This is what we ended up with. Now, there's nowhere to say this cannot become a 1.7 or a 4.4. Somebody might say, I would prefer to have a 4.4 so that bicyclists can ride on each side. Okay, pedestrians can use it, but bicyclists can use it too. Now, again, it won't be a standard bike lane because it's below our minimum, but that can be discussed and argued. Now, it's not in the proposal by the traffic consultant that was approved by the council. However, it's still open to interpretation. We can say this 4-foot area on each side that we're proposing is that edge of the road enhancement that will be used by pedestrians. On Vulcan, in some areas, we have 4 feet, and we recommended that to council as the edge of the road walkway. So that being said, this can be 6.2, this can be 4.4. But our focus here was to focus more on pedestrians and leave the bike lanes for a future where the road gets a little bit wider. But again, these are ideas for you, so when you want to provide us your input, you can think about how you can change your recommendations for us. Similarly, further down, well, I guess further north when we go up a Pepper Tree, now we have A2. This can again be a 5.5, but is a 5 convenient, comfortable for a pedestrian to walk on the edge of Rancho Santa Fe in this area where there aren't that many stop signs, the speed can be relatively high, the conflict is a little bit high. Do we want somebody to kind of walk? This is a little bit different from Vulcan, so we decided to convert it to A2, kind of compromise on the bike lane piece, and just leave a wider area for the multi-use path. I mean, the 8-foot can be easily used by bikers and pedestrians, but on the northbound side, we don't have anything. We go up further, and then this is a 7.5. Lanes are still 10. The greens that show up here, these are the existing walkways. Now, they're not necessarily concrete sidewalks, but they're different types of walkways, dirt path, DG path, very, very minor areas, few areas that we have concrete. I don't think there's that much, but this is mainly where we try to go to the bike lane idea because of the fact that the walkway exists. So we here, as you can see, we went to 5.5 here because there is a existing walkway. So people would most probably won't use the surface of the road to walk on Rancho Santa Fe. So there was some thought. This is this is not perfect. The number of elements involved in the decision-making process on how to utilize the edge of the road, there were multiple factors, and a lot of them were in conflict with each other. Side distance, the speed, the nearest stop sign, how we anticipate the speed be at that location, if there were residences, if we anticipate people actually walking in the area. But this is where it's kind of a fluid design. In a lot of areas you see 5.5, some areas you see 8.2, some areas you see 7.5s. We kind of did a lot of due diligence in what would be the best approach. But the main idea that would change this design is if we want to shoot for a narrower width on both sides that can accommodate bike lanes, or just focus on the recommendation of the traffic study that was approved by council, which talked about a edge of the road, multi-use path, walkway that bicyclists can also use. Because if we go for that whole, we need to have some sort of a bikeway on both sides that pedestrians also may use, it would impact the design quite drastically, and I guess we would have to come back. Now, that being said, this was shared with the, this item tonight was shared with the task force, just as a involvement of the community, because of the fact that that task force role kind of ended when that report went to council and was adopted, and at that point was shelved. So we don't have any active line of communication and active role for that task force. But to involve the community one more time in case there are inputs and comments or emails that can be sent to us from the community, we did notify them of this item tonight. And then again, this will go to council, the fact that this document was council adopted. But the funding is there. We have $100,000 that we want to spend on traffic calming and pedestrian enhancement, active transportation enhancements on this roadway. I don't want to go segment by segment. There are a lot of different elements. I'm sure you've seen them. But yeah, I'm open to questions. And then again, I guess the fact that this is too many different elements of design. If commissioners want to make some sort of a recommendation or motion, Amanda, maybe we can get these letters, like in F area or in H area or in G area, commission recommended converting the design to this or giving more weight to bike lane or yeah, however, I mean, you can use these letters because these letters are where the cross section changes. As you can see, we have a lot of different widths on Rancho Santa Fe, so each piece has its own meaning. We have two-way left turn lane, we have pockets, turn pockets. So yeah, it would be very tough to provide your input. We will listen to the video, so if we miss something in the motion, we can just capture it later on. Let's have an open discussion, and yeah, and feel free to ask your questions and whatever comments and input you have. We'll listen to this and we'll try to capture and incorporate this into the design before going to council. So you're not necessarily approving this to go to council tonight per se.
Thank you very much, Abe, for that presentation. Do we have speakers? Great, let's hear.
We do. We have two, Camille Perkins and then Rachel De La Vega.
Hi, thank you for your time today. My name is Camille Perkins. I live in Liebenhain. I guess the big picture thing is I'm very opposed to the way that the city of Encinitas is really handling all the traffic issues concerning Rancho Santa Fe Road. Big picture, I thought that the whole purpose of those previous studies were to resolve congestion on Rancho Santa Fe Road. It's kind of new to me, actually, from our traffic engineer, that that's not actually the focus. I do want traffic congestion resolved, and I'm very concerned that the bicyclization and pedestrianization of RSF is actually putting lives at risk in the community of Liebenhain. And since all these studies and motions and things were passed, there has been studies and things done by the fire department with quite a lot of meetings with the community expressing extremely serious concerns with evacuation and safety matters. So Rancho Santa Fe Road is our only road in and out. And what's being proposed, all these changes are unsafe and would further harm Liebenhain and make it unsafe, even less safe. Fire's real. 1996, Harmony Grove fire burned into Liebenhain and our neighbors lost their houses. Witch Creek Fire got within a mile of Alevenhain. Alevenhain roads don't just handle Alevenhain traffic. We have all the traffic from the surrounding community that comes through Alevenhain roads. City studies say that it'll take about 4 hours to evacuate Alevenhain, given the existing conditions. Recent fire department community meetings are actually talking about non-survivable events if people get stuck on many roadways within Alevenhain. Like, these are real things we're talking about in community meetings. We are talking about in community meetings that traffic is such that people are going to be stuck in cars because they're stuck in traffic on Manchester while fires burn over and around them in their cars within the city of Encinitas because there are inadequate evacuation accesses. And a lot of this Encinitas has created, streetscape, the proposed plans to Encinitas Boulevard, all of this stuff, all of these things that put impediments to all the roads across Encinitas, and Loma Santa Fe is doing it. I mean, it's not just Encinitas. Those are impeding everybody's abilities to get out. So they are going to be stuck in traffic. San Elijo Hills had a 4-hour delay in the Cocos fire trying to get people out. These are real issues. So we're looking at the fire department things saying that it's going to be hours it's about 4 hours to get out. And fires can be here in that time period. And we've also been discussing at these fire department meetings that traffic calming actually impedes evacuation access, not just fire access, but
Go ahead and continue.
I'm sorry.
No, please continue.
But traffic calming measures actually don't just impede fire department access, it impedes evacuation access as well. So all these very well-intentioned ideas about slowing cars down, they also slow you down in an emergency, making it take longer to get out. And so as we're adding and adding and adding incremental traffic calming measures, those also delay everyone's ability to get out. This proposals in front of you today specifically is highlighting that the narrowed roadways and other proposals are traffic calming. And we were really, I understood as a member of the community is very concerned about these evacuation issues. I understood at recent meetings that there would be no further traffic calming in the community because already circumstances are very, very, very dangerous for us. And I believe that any city proposals putting lives at risk or further risk are not acceptable. And, what really is the rationale for this? A lot of documents keep repeating this vague idea that Rancho Santa Fe is a backwater rural road. But I don't believe that that's supported by history or the documents. Because if you go back in the earliest maps of Rancho Santa Fe Road, and this was something where the community got together and they petitioned the Board of Supervisors to approve Rancho Santa Fe Road. And it goes back, and it was supposed to be a regional roadway. And the road grant itself reflects that it was supposed to be a regional roadway. I think it's a really large roadway. Is the grant 102 feet or something? It's really quite a large grant as opposed to most of the side streets. It then became a regional artery, and people need that road to evacuate from Elfin Forest, Rancho Santa Fe, Harmony Grove. Everybody uses Rancho Santa Fe Road to evacuate. It's not just an Alevenhain road. And there's no parallel road to the east that runs north and south until you hit about I-15. That's about 13 miles as the crow flies east, where people have to come to Rancho Santa Fe Road to sort of get, as they're fleeing fires coming from the east, that's where they're going to be going. And also, there's another piece of history that in connection with the vacation of Highway 680, which happened many years ago, there was lawsuits and court orders requiring Rancho Santa Fe Road to be improved to handle all that additional traffic as a regional roadway. Obviously, the city failed to make those improvements and instead continues to try to traffic calm Rancho Santa Fe Road, which is actively impacting not only the quality of life and the traffic and those issues, but also life and safety with evacuation. And I believe that lives are at risk in emergencies. Alevenhain, we all need Rancho Santa Fe Road to evacuate. Please don't move these proposals forward. I think that instead we really need to reassess and look at the existing traffic calming measures and really weigh it in connection with evacuation needs, which were not established until very, very recently with these reports. And I think we need to look at things like Fortuna Ranch Road, which has been traffic calmed, and, all these proposals for pedestrianizing and bicycles on Lone Jack, and all of these things need to be reassessed in connection with the safety risks that we're seeing in the studies coming out of the city. So, thank you. Oh, and one additional point is some of the, this is kind of a minutia, but a lot of the proposal contemplates horses or equestrians to be on the roadway itself, and horses can't use a concrete asphalt, or they can't use an asphalt surface because it's not an appropriate footing, and putting horses right next to the traffic would be unsafe. So sincere thanks for listening to me, and
Sure.
I very much appreciate, thank you.
Thank you for coming out and sharing
Thank you.
your thoughts.
Rachel De La Vega?
Yes, good evening. I will ditto a lot of what she said about the evacuation being the primary, should be the primary focus, and anything that is done with mobility. But one thing I think Abe said that, and I did attend some Zoom with MOSCA and some Facebook task force thing, but I think the number one thing is to have overall better communication or a new opportunity to get the community input. Now that you actually have drawings, nobody has seen this. Nobody knows about this. And I know when even the nice little lighted stop signs went in at Lone Jack, which I was one of the people who proposed it, there was some people were mad about that. So putting striping in will, I think it needs a lot more input. And that's for both this and actually I had the other topic. This will all, okay. The main thing on the 10-foot street lanes, if the fire department is fine with that, if they're able to make those turns. I know our RV and horse trailers cannot turn out from Lone Jack to the right going on Rancho Santa Fe Road without going into that turn lane. If there are cars there, we can't make the turn. And I'm the co-pilot on the RV, so I have to make sure that it's clear. So I have a major concern about that. The mobility shoulder walking areas on the west side. Haines a dark skies area. There are no streetlights. So I can't imagine somebody would walk in the dark or walk without reflective clothing, or walk with their back to traffic. But that, to me, is a nice risk management topic that I think really needs to be looked into. I know it's difficult with all the little aspects of the sections that some have paths and some don't have paths. And it may be too difficult to have the current semi-path, people walking on the dirt, make one side a good path, but not on the shoulder. I think on the shoulder is just not a good idea. So I think that's my main topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions, thoughts? None? No?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, I do
Commissioner
have a
Hall.
question for Abe. So this is my understanding is that the city right-of-way actually has more width than the paved section of the roadway. Is that correct? So what I'm getting is there room for, say, a DG path that's not paved on the side of the roadway?
Not sure what the actual right-of-way is, but at a minimum, I think we have 50, if not more. If your question is if there is room city right-of-way to actually build a actual DG path or trail, correct, it does exist. As said, we have a trail 82 that's already designed and approved, and I believe it's even funded, or it's close to being funded. It's maybe it's a little short, but yeah, the project, there is a CIP project for a trail all the way on the east side of Ranch Santa Fe up to El Camino.
Okay, well, one thing I'd suggest is maybe consider that for a walkway and then have a equal width bikeway on both sides, because I think the asymmetrical width, where you have, I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers, but 2 feet and 6 feet, it'd probably be preferable to have at least symmetrical widths, because anyone who goes south, it's likely to come north as well. And so why not have it equally safe or equally risky both directions?
As mentioned during the presentation, our idea was the fact that the trail will go on the east side. There will be a walkway on the east side all the way. So our main goal was to have a good amount of width on the left side, on the west side. So in case we have walkways on both sides, in case somebody decides to walk on the west side, there is still something to walk on. That's why we have that offset. But again, our idea was not to create the bike lane, because this was not in the council adopted document, and we know the width is not there in some areas to have a standard bike lane. But if that's the direction we're going to have, because about 80% of the length of the segment, we can have bike lanes. If we go down to 10, we can have a 5-footer, a 6-footer, maybe even a 7-footer bike lane on both sides. But about 20% of the length of the corridor, we don't have enough room to have the bike lane. Now, for this would be our ATP, which says Ranch Santa Fe is a bike lane road. So that's for it. Against it is the council adoption of that document last year, 2 years ago, where it said, since we don't have a bike lane right now, since we don't have a walkway, we can accommodate for the walkway with this edge of the road enhancement treatment. That's what council approved, and that's what council funded last year. Last year, council funded to implement measures out of that study. Now, I'm not saying that those potential improvements in that study are perfect, but that's what council approved, and that's what was funded. Now, I'm not saying we can't deviate from it. We can go back to council and say, hey, this is what we received from our traffic commission. This is our recommendation because of the fact that you approved this document and you directed us to implement. But similar to what we did last meeting with the parking improvement in downtown, this is the commission's input that said, no, we don't like this. We prefer to see bike lanes in both sides. We don't want to see walkway. This doesn't make sense, which is totally fine.
Okay, well, thanks for the explanation, but I'll just state that I think a 2-foot bike lane is not very useful, so.
We're not naming it bike lane. None of
okay,
these,
2 foot.
even the 7.5s, the 7.7s, none of them need, all along this, you'll see 6-footers on the edges. None of them will be marked as a bike lane. None of them will be signed as a bike lane. These all will be edge of the road enhancements. Can be used by bikes, but they will not be marked as a bike lane.
Okay, well, that's fair, but I think people will still want to use it as a bike lane, but it'll be safer if it's more than 2 feet. I mean,
Yeah,
there
if
are
we're
bikes
thinking
riding no
about
matter
bikes
what, so-
using them in both directions, 4.4 is definitely better than 6.2, correct.
Yes.
But is that 4 better than a 6 for a pedestrian? The fact that we're going to have the trail on the east side, if we want to have something on the west side, and if somebody's walking on it, is 4, which is pretty much the shoulder width of somebody is equal to, I guess it's a balancing thing. Our direction, as said, was to implement that traffic study that was approved by commission and council. It was approved by commission, I think the date was there, and then later by council, and then council in the budget season during the prioritization process funded $100,000 to implement that study. Now, I couldn't deviate from this to say, okay, well, I had a study approved by council, I'm going to do totally something else. I had to follow
I
that.
don't want to belabor the point, and you've explained the situation quite well to me. I think you understand it, so we don't need to discuss anymore. You understand the situation. But I do encourage you to use some of that right-of-way width if you need to, if you can. So,
I mean, as I mentioned, we only have 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah, with 100,000, we cannot widen the road for 50 feet.
Or even a GG path, I know you can't even do that, but
yeah,
it'd be nice. So thank you.
Commissioner Standifer?
Thank you. The report that was included in the packet had a number of suggestions besides the laning and the striping that you've described. Are those suggestions are they going to be acted on, or are we going to see them in the future, or they're not? What's the status?
The crosswalks, the mid-block crossing was after further meetings with the community, moved a little bit. It was initially going to go to Morning Sun, I think. Later on, it moved to Olive Crest. There was another improvement, which was the Continental crosswalks, as said, at Lone Jack. The roundabouts, which replaced the study initial recommendation that was traffic signals at El Camino and Lone Jack, those were replaced with roundabouts. That was the community and task force's preference. Those are shelved at the moment because of the fact that there's no budget for design, let alone construction. So I don't anticipate those coming to light anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. On the striping, could you comment a little bit on what it means to have a 10-foot lane? I know that it would have a traffic calming effect. 10 feet seems narrow. Do we have any other places in the city where we've gone to 10-foot?
Correct. Yes, we have a lot of 10s actually, like the past 5 years that I've been in the city. Most of the areas that it was an urban area, the speed limit was less than 40 or less, we tend to go for 10s. So it was implemented. It's a standard practice these days, I guess, post 2008, 10 maybe. Most traffic engineers in urban areas shoot for 10-footer lanes. The width is enough, especially in lower speeds. It adds to the friction between vehicles, and it's wide enough to accommodate buses, trash pickup. The geometry is acceptable. At intersections, you have issues when you have larger vehicles, but converting to a 12-footer would not resolve those. If you have a turning issue with a semi-trailer or with a large vehicle, at an intersection turning left where you have a 12-footer receiving lane, then you have to kind of encroach into the adjacent opposing lane to be able to make that turn. Converting it to 10 maybe would make it a little bit worse, but it doesn't convert a acceptable situation to an unacceptable. It would still be the same issue. So 10-footer lanes aren't really something that are against any code or a violation of anything.
Okay, one more question with regards to the striping again and the comments that have been made by members of the public here this evening regarding evacuation. It is probably the #1 issue that the people in Olivine think about when it comes to traffic and mobility in the area. What sort of impact would this have potentially on what's already going to be a difficult at best situation in the event that evacuation is necessary?
Good question. The fact that I don't anticipate anybody walking on the edge of the road in a fire in an emergency situation or probably riding their bikes, I don't see how a 10-footer lane with the existence of a 4-footer, 6-footer, or 8-footer edge area adjacent to that lane impact the speed of a vehicle evacuating. There are no physical elements, there's no vertical element, there's no cushion, there's no bollard. This is just mere striping on the ground. So, and we're not changing the lane configuration. We're not dropping any lanes. We're not converting a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road to a 2-lane. We're not removing our 2-way left turn lane where it exists. There were conversations I saw in some emails about addition of a lane. This was never in any conversation. This was never discussed when that study was being prepared, analyzed. This wasn't modeled. So I don't know where that idea is coming from. But in this design, the lane configuration of Rancho Santa Fe is not changing. So I don't see the capacity being affected in an emergency condition. Now, what the situation is, I'll defer to our fire department. I know there was a lot of analysis and evaluations when the Goodson project was presented to the city council. But this design as it is right now, or even if we tweak the edge of the road, converting a 2-footer edge to a 4-footer edge, this, I don't see it impacting our evacuation. I don't know if Hans wants to weigh in.
Sure, I just want to make clear that the road width isn't changing, like Abe said. The lanes are narrowing. A concern that the fire department has would be, as we have with some of the other lane diets, as we call them, is our equipment that is just the cab of the engine's 8 feet wide. And then we have to add the mirrors on each side of that, which is, I would say, close to a foot on each side. So that's pushing the boundaries of the, literally the boundaries of these lanes with the mirrors out there. Certainly, Liebenhain is an area that and I would be very cautious about calling this traffic calming, because we don't permit traffic calming in the very high fire hazard severity zones of any type. So that's a straight no from the fire department when we talk about traffic calming in those zones.
I will say we are working with the Liebenhain Fire Safe Council again. I don't know if you guys are aware, but we're meeting again on March 6th. We did have another meeting, and we're looking at some improvements we can do with the evacuation plan itself, and we've gotten a lot of input from all of the residents. So we're going to comb through that and go over it and see what we can do. We're also leveraging some new technology with Firewatch and Zone Haven. So we are doing some new things out there to help with the evacuation plan, and we hope that you guys will continue to be involved. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Commissioner Johnson here. As long as I can remember, and I've only been a resident for a little over 35 years, Rancho Santa Fe Road has always been a bit of a problem. It's a narrow road. It's beautiful for the community. It's an agricultural area. However, we're putting more and more traffic on it. And tonight I hear from residents of the area that this plan seems to be worse than the status quo. And I'm hoping that we can find ways to make things better, but I doubt this. It's just, this is such an intractable problem. I don't know what really can be done about it. We could try this plan, but if we're getting opposition from the residents, we're going to get opposition from those same residents at the city council meeting and probably many of their neighbors. So I don't know what to do, honestly.
Thank you. Commissioner Hansberger?
Hi, thanks for the plan. As I look at it, I have to agree with one of the residents talking about the walking lane. And as a resident who regularly uses the walking lane along Vulcan, I find them really dangerous and not effective. So what would I think be better, and she had suggested it, is if maybe just focusing on one walking lane on one side of the road. When I run those trails out there a lot, because I teach out there and I run all over town. And when I am out there, I'm happy to use a crosswalk and get to a safe walking zone. So whether it's a DG path or a concrete, whatever it is, I'd rather cross the street than, I don't feel that it's effective to have two walking paths on either side. So that would be my suggestion, is one safe one on one of the sides, I think, is better than a narrow and, non-existent on the other. So that's point one.
If I may, Commissioner,
Yeah.
because this is good, this is exactly the type of conversation that I like to have tonight. And I do like to have this open discussion with you and other commissioners. So with what you're saying, is a little bit against what Commissioner Wong mentioned about having a half and half width that can be used by both sides, both with bicyclists and pedestrians. Because if we focus on one side, this would take us to that whole 10 feet to one side and 2 feet to the other side, and one side, which was mostly our train of thought when we were designing this. As you can see, we have 6.2, we have 8.2 at C, 8 feet on one side and 2 feet on the other. So that's one thing to think about when we're deciding what to do with this. The second piece is, in a few locations where we have like more than 30 feet, more than 35 feet of width, in these areas, if we give away 12 feet to the side of the road, it can easily be confused with a lane. And now you're creating a wide area, looks very safe and very convenient for pedestrians to walk, but without any kind of physical separation, any kind of barrier, which I know because of the fire situation, we do not want to limit the width of the road by adding bollards or something to kind of protect this area. This can easily be confused with a lane, which is
Yes.
another concern that we had. So we try to keep this edge of the road area, when it's unstriped, there's no crosshatch on it, we try to keep it with less than 8. We didn't go above 8, I think. In some areas, when it went above 8, we introduced crosshatches for people not to confuse it with a travel lane.
Yes.
That's another thing that can affect that. Now, go ahead. If you have comments about what I mentioned and how your suggestion might not work with Commissioner Wong's suggestion, this is something that I would like Commission's final input on.
Yes,
Because that would
well,
affect our design.
Thank you for pointing that out. And I actually thought I was agreeing with Commissioner Wong there because I would prefer bike lanes. So I was thinking that in some of these areas, I thought you were saying that most of the areas either currently have a trail or are going to get a trail where this walking path is. Is that true? Is that trail 80, is it 82? Is it going to come
think it's
through
80.
here?
Yes, so 82 goes all the way on the east side of Encinitas Boulevard. So this area on the east side of the road goes all the way up to El Camino del Norte.
Yeah.
So because of that, like here at B, we left 6 feet on the west side for a potential walkway, and then just a 2-foot edge area on the east, so that this can be 7-1. Because of the trail that is going on the east side, we didn't leave anything on this side. But if we want to go for a 4-4, to leave 4 feet on each side to be utilized by bikes,
Yeah.
then this 4 on the west side will not be good for pedestrians anymore.
Right, but they'll have the trail on the other side, which was the,
Correct.
right, eventually. And I realize that it's not there, but it is funded, right? And construction is coming, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't quote me on that. I know it was going to start, but at some point it didn't. I think there is some funding issues and some right-of-way issues, but since it's our CIP project, I'd rather not
Sure.
comment.
That's okay.
And
I
that
just,
that would again take us back. Okay, so if we say because of the fact that the trail is coming,
Yeah.
forget about the pedestrian and just do bike lanes as much as you can.
I
Now
think
we're
so.
deviating from the council adoption of the document that was pedestrian enhancement and the budget dedication that was 100,000 toward implementing those. Now, again, I just want to clarify, I can take this to council and say, this is the revision of the plan. This is what commission said. You gave us 100,000 to do this. This is what we think what the study is saying. This is what the commission says we got to do. And then they can decide at that point. But I want to get this input from you, so when I go there, I have both sides of the.
well, I guess I just feel if a trail is coming on one side, that's going to be very safe for pedestrians, and then we're going to not have bike lanes on there. I mean, are you going to, I mean, what's the other solution? Are those areas going to be sharrows, or what's going to happen? I personally would prefer to have one safe walking path and then bike lanes, but that's my input there. And I guess my other question was, if you do the 6 and the 2, are you then going to make sharrows? You know, because that's the only other option for the bikes, right?
Correct. So we'll
Okay.
see in our next item, our sharrow policy. Currently, Ranch Santa Fe is 40 mile per hour. Although MTCD does allow sharrows, my preference has never been to do sharrows on 40. So because of the traffic, with what our fire marshal mentioned, I'm hesitant to use that phrase anymore. With the 10-footer lanes, I anticipate we'll be able to lower the speed limit after implementation. And if we get to 35, then we can definitely do sharrows on Ranch Santa Fe. Now, when the trail goes in, if we want to come back and restripe the road and add bike lanes, that's totally an option.
Okay. Well, you're the expert, so honestly, I will defer to you on that. I guess, and my last question just was, what does the fire department think about the striping plan? I know you kind of answered for them, I thought, but I'm not sure if, do they have concerns that it is going to slow traffic? Or, I'm sorry if you already answered that. I just wanted just a little more clarification. Are they traffic calming measures? No, yes, no? It seemed like that was a
Yeah,
question.
so in regards to the evacuation plan, we are going to have the ability to bag stop signs and to have controlled intersections. So we are going to have sheriff's department, police department out there, and the fire department out there helping assist with the flow of traffic. So narrowing the lanes on the evacuation side isn't going to slow us down, but that doesn't speak to maybe the concerns about safety. So I know that Abe is he's the traffic engineer, and I kind of default to him when it comes to the road widths and all that. But in regards to the evacuation plan itself, we would be able to control those on our end so that we could keep traffic flowing.
Okay, that's great news, because I do think there's so many kids in this neighborhood, in this whole area, that are riding their bikes, walking to school. We have a lot of schools right around there, junior high, elementary, high school, and there are a lot of kids on e-bikes, there are a lot of kids walking, so I do agree that we need to improve pedestrian and bike safety. And again, Abe, you're the expert on this, so I would thank you for looking into this.
If I could just make a quick comment, I agree 100% with the vice chair. There's no disagreement between it. So if a trail is on the east side, it can be bi-directional. So I'd still prefer, as I believe the vice chair said, equal width for the 4 and 4 on either side. So no disagreement there. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Trapp?
One idea, Chair, excuse me, to follow on what Commissioner Wong mentioned. One idea could be, if that's the direction that Commission likes us to proceed with, there was no clear, strict cross-section in the report that was adopted by council that mentions the width of these edge of the road enhancements. In other words, we do have this direction from the report that we have to create these edge areas, but there's nowhere that says how much they should be, how much wide they should be. What we can do is we can create these similar widths on both sides, 5, 4, 4, but it's still not call them bike lanes. They can be utilized by bicyclists, but they're still available to pedestrians. So we could do 6-6 instead of doing 8-4 or 9-3, but not mark them as a bike lane to kind of, I guess, meet both the recommendations of the report that was approved by council and also the path that commission wants us to go through.
I think that's a good idea, because of all of the kids on bikes and e-bikes riding, they will be in there, but, pedestrians can go in there as well, so, or vice versa.
Commissioner Trapp?
Well, I think you answered my question, Abe. So there was no recommendation for either dividing it on either side of the road or putting it on one side. They didn't.
There was a recommendation to put the walkway on the west side because of the trail, but with this suggestion that I just made, based on the recommendation of Commissioner Wong, we would still meet that recommendation from the report, which was form a walkway on the west side. We're not eliminating that. But on top of that, we're just, instead of giving most of the available width to the west, because there's no minimum, I think the minimum requirement in our active transportation plan is 3 feet, which obviously we don't want to have there. We have more than that. But as long as we meet that, which in most of the areas we will have more than that, there's nothing that says you shouldn't leave anything on the east side, which can be utilized by bicyclists. That's, I guess, where we're.
What percentage of the area is real narrow where you can't get, it's less than the 8 feet?
Yeah, I mean, even 8 is not acceptable for having bidirectional bike lanes. If you don't have a curb and gutter, METCD does allow having a 4-footer without a curb and gutter, but we don't do that, and we haven't done it in the city. Like as you can see from A, when we go all the way to B, we don't have the width. Where we get to Pepper Tree, now we have enough to have 2 5-footers, still pretty tight to have 2 10-footer lanes adjacent to 2 5-footer bike lanes, but it's acceptable per BTCD. When we go further up, when we get to El Camino, we do have the width. I think at Lone Jack, we don't have the room anymore. Yeah, it's right at K. The subtitles are not allowing, but as you can see, at K, we have 4 and 2 only. So there's only 6 feet on both sides. That obviously we cannot have both bike lanes. But then again, the fact that we're not marking it as a bike lane, we wouldn't need to mark sharrows here to clarify there's no bike lane and just sharrow. This is all edge of the road enhancement, and it's a multi-use path basically. And then where we get to L, this is right after that curvature north of Lone Jag when it kind of bends toward Carlsbad. I know that it looks like east-west, but this is just north of Lone Jag, this L. As you can see, this is 4-2 again, and then close to Santa Catalina, this starts kind of opening up. And then we get to Olive Crest, right? Oh, 13th, okay. So it kind of widens up after, and here is pretty easy to accommodate bike lanes and buffers and everything. But south of this, there are a few areas that we don't have room for bike lanes. It's not much, I would say maybe 10-15% along the stretch we don't have room for 5 feet and 5 feet on each side, but that's about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Standifer?
Thank you. I have one quick question. If the project goes forward with the pedestrian trail on the east side of the road like we've been talking about, would there be any consideration of additional crosswalks to come from the one side to get safely to the other side?
Very good question. I haven't yet thought about it, but when this trail goes through, I'll make sure that we, especially at maybe stop sign locations, at some of those, maybe we accommodate new marked crossings to kind of ease the access to the trail. But that's something that we'll definitely consider.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. I want to try to put this in perspective. These striping changes that you're asking us to review and everything, they really don't have any impact on evacuation. Is that correct?
It's not just for me to say, but as a traffic engineer, I don't see why a vehicle evacuating cannot, when they're going super fast, for example, encroach into that 4-footer edge area maybe by 1 foot. Their tire, if they're going fast, they don't want to utilize the 10, they want to use more space. I don't see why they won't be able to, have their tire on the line, for example, if they're escaping a fire.
Like we're
There's
not,
no vertical
we're not
element.
we're not adding any road space. We're not adding any lane width or anything. We're not putting anything that would impede any vehicle. We're talking about paint on the road. Is that correct?
But I would still like our fire marshal to.
Yeah, so the road width itself is not changing, it's just paint.
Right.
So the vehicles can still travel just as they would now on the road to get out.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to be sure about that because the residents or the public who are concerned about evacuation, as well they should, I just want to make sure that this is not going to really alter that fact. If the evacuation plan has issues or whatever, this striping plan doesn't affect that at all. I mean, we're not making it worse, we're not making it better or anything else like that. So I do want to ask a question. When you said that the fire department does not approve any traffic calming, is narrowing lanes to 10 feet, do you consider that traffic calming?
In this instance, no, I was just warning against using that language in this instance, because if it is traffic calming, the fire department doesn't approve of it.
Okay, so.
The language should be changed, like the chief said, there's no change in the width of the road. This is striping, it's paint only on the road. So we need to be very careful in that we don't word it as traffic calming, because as I understand it, Rancho Santa Fe really doesn't need traffic calming. All I hear is people concerned about all the traffic on there as it stands right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really traffic calming, I don't believe, right?
No, in the
It's-
report, it's called as a pedestrian enhancement. So the reason for this project is not narrowing the lane. The reason is to accommodate pedestrians and other modes of transportation.
I think Ms. Perkins, she showed us in that report that it does say traffic calming.
Okay, so that should not, so, okay, all right, so it's not traffic calming, huh?
Well, the 10-footer lane, that has been our standard practice, as said, and it's not just a matter of this meeting. A 10-footer lane has been mentioned in multiple commission meeting and council meeting by our engineers, by council, by commissioners. It would lead to slower traffic. So to say, I guess it's two things to say: it will lead to slower traffic, or it would cause a slower response time, or it will cause a worse evacuation. I don't see them as being the same, but I cannot say a 10-footer lane will not have traffic calming effect on vehicles, because I've said it tens of times that it does.
So, in your experience, do 10-foot wide travel lanes tend to slow down traffic?
You're really putting me in a rock and a hard place, Chair, but yeah, it does.
Okay.
There are proven studies, there are multiple studies nationally that show that 10-footer lanes slows down traffic.
Okay, all right. What's the current speed limit on this road?
40.
40. So, and the current travel lanes they vary between?
Yes, there are a lot of different widths there.
Okay, so, but this proposal is to make the travel lanes 10 feet wide in each direction. And part of the pedestrian enhancement is painting a white line on the outside of the lane that's 10 feet. So everything to the right of the white line is basically a shoulder.
Correct, edge of the road, yes.
And that's essentially what it is now. There are no bike lanes in that area now, there's just shoulders.
Correct.
And bicycles are not required to ride on a shoulder. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. I ride that road all the time, so I just wanted to make sure. And I had a couple of questions. I think there was a letter from the public that said there was nothing north of, let's see. I wish I had highlighted it. Okay, yeah, north of El Camino del Norte, excluded from the recommendations, but I think there are plans north of El Camino del Norte. Is that correct on there?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. I personally am in favor of 10-foot lanes. I don't think 10-foot wide travel lanes would have any impact on evacuation, because I think all traffic patterns are completely different then. So I don't have a problem with the 10-foot lanes at all. And I don't know if anybody wants to put a motion together to approve the striping plans or not, or make something. I would like to, I'll put forward a motion that we support the striping changes that enhance the safety and mobility on Rancho Santa Fe that produce 10-foot wide travel lanes.
I second that with the recommendation that we have equal width shoulders throughout, so rather than 6.244.
May I recommend an adjustment to the motion? I do totally understand what you want to get to. Instead of kind of forcing it into equal widths, maybe saying adjusted, modify the design to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrian on both sides, so that in case we have to go for a different widths in two sides because of a different reason, we're not deviating from the motion.
Perfect, thank you for the rewording. That's what I already said.
What is that? My hearing is bad?
What he said. That we
Modifying
accommodate-
the design to
So-
accommodate
Amanda,
for,
can you read that back for us?
Modify the design to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists on both sides.
correct, because the current design only has accommodation on one side in multiple areas.
Yes, that's current motion. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Abe.
So do we have any questions or comments on the motion and the additional part of the motion?
Can you just read it back one more time? I'm sorry. All of it from the beginning.
Sure. Let's see if I may have it right. The motion was to support the proposed striping changes that produce the 10-foot wide travel lanes and to modify the design to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists on both sides.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Commissioner Toth?
I guess we really don't need to kind of identify anything more than the fact that we want to split that width, correct?
Yeah, I guess. Where possible, have the width equal. Should we add that in, or? No?
Sure.
That way, because can we add that in?
So any place possible have equal widths.
For bike and pedestrian, yeah. So I don't know if you want to put that before or after. You're the wordsmith over there.
Okay. What was I going to say? So bicycles are allowed to be in the travel lane, even
Without-
if there is a wide area to the right of the travel lane. Bicycles may choose to ride in that, but bicycles are allowed in the travel lane. I want to make sure of that.
I mean, as far as I know, I wish our deputy was here, but as far as I know about CVC, short of existence of a actual bike lane, the bicyclist does not need to be in the shoulder.
Okay.
I mean, the old not impede the traffic flow still applies. So if you're in a vehicle that you're driving very slow because of a flat tire or whatever, and there's width on the shoulder that you can't get into, you have to open the road up. The similar rule might apply to a bicyclist. You're not allowed to ride at 50 miles an hour, blocking 20 vehicles behind you if there is a shoulder to ride on. I'm not sure if it applies to get out of the lane, to go into the shoulder, to open up the road for vehicles, but I don't want to say for our deputies. But I can see how this becoming an issue if there is a 8-footer unmarked area on the edge of the road that is totally convenient for a bicyclist to ride on, but the bicyclist decides not to get on it for whatever reason. I can see how a driver might be disappointed and how a deputy might feel that they want to enforce that CVC code on them. I'm not sure if it's applicable, but I do know we're not supposed to impede traffic if we can, so.
And we're not putting in any bike lanes, any marked bike lanes. You're not proposing anything like that on this.
Because of the fact that I know I cannot get to a continuous bike lane, one reason. Second reason, it's not the council direction. I mean, it might very well be the council direction at that night when we present it to the council, that, hey, yeah, forget what we told you about implementing that traffic study that talked about pedestrian enhancements. We want you to do bike lanes because our ATP calls for a bike lane, even though 15-20% of the stretch, you don't have room for it. Forget about pedestrians for now, just do the bike. Because if we do bike lanes, that totally means no pedestrian on Rancho Santa Fe until the trail comes in,
Okay.
which is a little different from the traffic study.
Okay, all right. So if there aren't any other questions or comments, we can go ahead and do a vote on the motion. I think there was a second. There was Jim, you had the second, right?
Okay. I don't know who. Oh, yes, you proposed it, right?
Yes.
First motion. Okay, I did the second with modification.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
So we can go ahead and vote then. So all in favor of supporting the striping changes with the suggestion that where possible, it's equal width on each side of the travel lane. Is that correct? Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? Just want to record say that there was no opposition to that. And I really do feel that this has nothing to do, it does not impact the evacuation plans. I don't want it, like I would never want to support something that is going to impact evacuation plans. So that's just for me.
Thank you, Chief. Before getting to the next item, when I invited our fire chief and our fire marshal, I mentioned that we will have them until 8 tonight. So is it okay if we thank them for their presence tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for your
very much.
presence tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
And welcome aboard.
We want to be able to bring our fire marshal back here again. I don't want to keep them until midnight.
Thank you very much. And again, congratulations on being our new fire chief. Does anybody need a break? Or should we just keep plowing through? Seeing nobody needs a break, we'll just keep plowing through. Okay, next item on the agenda is a policy to implement Class 3 bikeway pavement markings, or sharrows. The recommended action is to recommend City Council approve the sharrow policy. Abe?
Thank you, Chair. So when we did our work plan for council this year, we had a few policies that were missing. We wanted to create those to have a more streamlined process on how we do things in the city. More of these to come. I think we're working on 2 other policies that will come to commission in March. Our implementation for rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RFBs, and also blinking stop signs and yield signs in the city. Those 2 will come to you in March for your review and approval. This one is our share implementation policy. We're in the city, we do sharrows, and how we decide in the future on which roads. Kind of touches on what we spoke earlier about Rancho Santa Fe. So California MTCD does have some information with regards to usage of sharrows. It says, this is summarized, this is not the exact language of MTCD, I believe it was attached, but it says to alert users and kind of assist them with lateral positionings where bicyclists stay on the lane, where we have on-the-street parking, where we have circles and roundabouts. Alert the drivers about where they are, alert the bikes when it's a wide lane, for the safe positioning of the bicyclists. And also, because of the fact that there are chevrons on the sharrow that shows direction, to kind of clarify for the bicyclists which direction they should be riding. It also, it used to be before, I think 2012 and before, MTCD used to say sharrows on roadways of 40 or higher are not recommended. But later on, I think in the 2014 version, I'm not sure if it was the federal version or the California version, introduced language that, because they noticed many cities, because of limited right-of-way or the available widths that they had to put sharrows on some faster roads. So not to create a liability concern for cities, they tweaked the language and are now all saying you shouldn't do it unless, and then the unless that they give is, I guess, gives a little bit of flexibility to the city, and the language of the unless is not very objective, to kind of leave it a little bit to the judgment of the city engineer and the city officials. The language is there. I did not like that language. I mean, I talk about it. Maybe I can just show you if it's here. Did I pass it? So yeah, this is the guideline. It's a California guideline. I think feds still haven't added it. It says shared lane marking may be placed on roadways that have a speed limit above 35, which is 40 or more, where there is bicycle travel and there is no bike lane and the right-hand traffic lane is too narrow to allow motor vehicles to safely pass. This is not really a very objective, like where there is bike travel, we're almost, well, I guess everywhere, well, you cannot say there's no bike travel on a roadway, so this is not very objective. And then there's no marked bike lane. Obviously, if there was a marked bike lane, we wouldn't even need a sharrow. So this, I think, they kind of made it a very fluid and flexible to allow cities who have it on roads of 40 miles per hour or above. We are technically allowed to do so, but as mentioned earlier with Rancho Santa Fe, I've pretty much always recommended against using sharrows on 40. There are studies about collisions and how, fatalities increase very drastically when you go over even 30 miles an hour between vehicles and bicycles. So going to 40, if you recall, when the first cycle track was presented to council, I did not at that point recommend sharrows on the cycle track until after the speed survey. However, at that point, City Council directed the staff to put the sharrows on 101 even before the survey. Now, luckily, we were able to lower the speed limit after implementation of the cycle track to 35. So I have some peace of mind now, but there was a very short period where we had a 40 mile per hour 101 with sharrows. So that being said, this report talks about what we think should be our policy. And again, this is totally my evaluation of the municipal code, our California MUTCD, our active transportation plan, the guidelines in there, and some other language that I added. These are not coming from any formal national or state guideline. These are based on my judgment and some similar cities that have seen how they do sharrow policies. So number one, sharrows may be placed on roadways with the speed limits of 35 or less. Now, I haven't mentioned 40 or above here, although MUTCD does allow that. But on number 4, because the Muni Code does allow me to implement sharrows and other traffic control devices, technically the authority is still there to do. If I don't know, 1% chance something happens that we need to do it, it would not be against this policy. But our policy starts with we'll want to do it only on 35 mile per hour or less. Sharrow marking number 2, sharrow marking can be placed on all roadways identified in the ATP. As you know, it was attached. Our ATP classifies different roadways of the city and provides us direction on which roads should be bike lanes, which roads should be sharrows. And this says we can place sharrows on all those roads identified as class 3s. And then the number 3 is what I added here that says if a roadway is not classified as a class 3 bikeway, a sharrow on our ATP list, we can place it if 2 or more conditions here are met, or if A and B are met by 70% or more, which I try to emphasize on bike activity on the roadway. If there is a bike activity of more than 60 bikes per hour for 2 peak hours, meaning basically 1 bike per minute. If you see an average of 1 bike per minute, it's an active area for bicyclists. Even if it's not classified as a class 3 on ATP, we would like to see a sharrow here. If the average daily traffic is 1,000 or higher, on lower volume, usually doesn't matter as much because of the minimal friction and bicyclists are able to conveniently ride on the road. On one-way roads, even if it's not classified, I think it's a good idea to have sharrow marking, especially with the MUTCD recommendation that to clarify for bicyclists that they're not allowed to go against the one-way traffic. It would be a good idea to have sharrows. And on roads, the wide lane mentioned in the MUTCD has some information about where to put the sharrow on a wide lane, but it doesn't mention where you have to start putting sharrows. So I chose 12 to 17 because I assume if there is a 10, we would already do it. So it's most probably there already in the ATP. And above 17, there is a good chance that we put a bike lane there. If it's 18, we can easily accommodate a bike lane there. So we don't really need to think about sharrows there. So I added 12 to 17. And the last one, obviously not our preference, but if there is a bike versus vehicle collision in the past 5 years on that roadway, I consider the criteria. So two or more, if met, or if A and B, which are about the volume of the roadway, are met by more than 70%. That's my, and then the last one about the Muni Code that authorizes me to implement traffic control devices, signing and striping on any roadway of the city. I'm open to questions. This is my suggestion for the policy. The fact that it's our first one, obviously we can come back and revisit this. This is not going to be written in stone. This is not a final policy. If 6 months passes and we find that, well, there's an opportunity to make this better, we can certainly revisit this.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Would you like to do public speakers first?
Oh, there is a public speaker.
have
That'd be
one.
great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting.
We have Rachel De La Vega.
Hi, Rachel.
Rachel De La Vega. I know this has been, the fact that we're at a policy level, I know a lot of discussion's already gone. I just happened to, for whatever reason, take a look at your agenda this weekend and go, well, wait a minute, are we sure we want to do this? Because I looked at the map and I saw Lone Jack as part of the bike lane 3 with sharrows on it. And again, my concerns are no lights. So sharrows are invisible. You'll have a e-bike rider who's 13 years old with a very small taillight, dark clothing per usual. Cars will not be expecting to see them in the travel lane, and I know we can't make roads 100% safe, but I think the way, especially, Lone Jack particularly is used, people use common sense, the drivers, they know it's super narrow, we're gonna wait for a bike to go around the turn at the 90-degree bend, we're not gonna pass them. And I had the chance to just look up 3 things saying, well, are there any downsides to sharrows? And I'm sure, hopefully this has been looked at by the commission and by the city. I'm sure you've especially looked at that. But a few things I saw today, there was nothing statistically safer about sharrows, or there were no statistically more bikes using those roads if they're sharrows. So, just speaking for Lone Jack, I don't think there's the need to put sharrows. I mean, that's just a concept. And I read that these things were in Bicycle Magazine, People for Bikes, and National Transportation Research Board. So, they're out there. I mean, I just looked at those. So that's my main topic for the community. And then, again, like with Rancho Santa Fe, having all of a sudden sharrows appear on a road and people go, what the heck? Having an announcement to the community, let them know, if possible, have input, if it makes sense. But I think that's just really my 2 cents on these sharrows. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, any thoughts or ideas? Okay, I guess none. I'll go ahead and let my thoughts. My first question is, I don't see a need for this policy. Abe, you said under number 4, the City of Encinitas policy is that the city traffic engineer has the authority to implement sharrows on different roadways. You can do it at any time. I don't think we need a policy. I think my main concern with a policy is, I also think there's a chance that it can be used to not do something, to not make a roadway safer, to not make it so that motorists their attention is drawn to the fact that bicycles can be in the lane. It's kind of like the first tier traffic calming thing. The policy is such that it's a setup for why something can't be done. And I have a problem with that. I'd rather have policies that get to how something can be done. I don't like setting minimums and things like that. So I personally am against setting a policy for sharrows. Let's see. So, for instance, Rancho Santa Fe Road, even though it has a 40, I personally think that it's probably a good idea to have sharrows in that lane or in most roadways because it draws attention to motorists that bicycles can be there. And also, they can use the full lane. And then I have a specific question about, and if I forget to talk about it during the follow-up log, I'll just mention it now. On San Elijo Avenue between Kilkenny and Manchester, it's on the ATP as a Class 3, but in the follow-up log, it says, you say no to the sharrows on that twisty-turny section. So, like I said, I'm against setting a policy because I think it can be used to prevent things that might be beneficial. So those are my thoughts. Anybody?
Yes, if I could make a comment. First of all,
Commissioner Wong.
sorry for jumping the gun there, but first of all, I agree with you that I don't like shallows. Well, for one thing, I don't like shallows on a bicycle, and I know drivers don't like shallows either, so no one really likes them. But I think they are often used as an excuse to say that we did something for bikes, and it shouldn't be used as an excuse for saying, well, we don't have to do any more because we're paying shallows. And I think that's what the chair was trying to say. Given that, it does help, I imagine, in giving a little more legitimacy to having a bike taking the lane, which generally has a right to do anyway, but having a painted sign symbol saying, yes, I'm allowed to be here. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Commissioner Hansberger?
I agree with Commissioner Wong that I think it's important to have it labeled as a mother of two drivers in their 20s. They are driving in areas where they might not be expecting cyclists, and even myself, I could be driving in an area I might not be expecting cyclists. I think it's important to have the road clearly labeled that that bikes are allowed to be in that full lane. I think it makes people aware. I also have to say I disagree with you. I think it's good to have some criteria for implementing whether or not we're going to put a sharrow in or not, because I think that they can be dangerous, and we did have a really terrible incident on the 101 a few years back where a woman was struck in a sharrow. So I'm not sure if the city needs to have clear guidance and criteria for what constitutes having a sharrow, but I think I like to have metrics when I'm doing things. Maybe it's just the scientist in me, but I like to know that we're meeting these. But I didn't design this, Abe, you did. So, and maybe you already said it, but could you give us your rationale as to why you think this is important? Because I'd like to hear from you. You're the one that put all the thought into this, and I do appreciate the hard work you put into it. So what are your thoughts, and why is this important?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was, we're not so far, although Chair mentioned that he doesn't like to see the policy, but the reasoning behind it is not so much different from why I drafted this. So in a way, it's pretty close, although it might look like we're trying to sell a policy and you're saying we don't need it. Not you, but Chair and Commissioner Wong. The idea is that we have this METCD language that says where you should, not even should, I think it uses can. METCD doesn't say should for sharrows. But where you can use these sharrows, where you have wide travel lanes that you want to clarify for bicyclists where to be, where you have one-way traffic, where you want to clarify for bicyclists this is the direction of riding, where you have higher speeds, you don't want to have them. So there is some recommendation in METCD with regards to where it is a good. METCD understands that, as Commissioner Wong mentioned, when there is no bike lane, you're allowed to be in the lane. There's nothing against it. So marking it should serve a purpose. We are after something. Otherwise, pretty much everywhere in the city that we don't have a bike lane, I think it's safe to say like 95% of the city, we don't have room for a bike lane. So should we go out and just paint sharrows everywhere? So I see Chair Newman nodding. I don't agree, Chair. That would take out the whole effectiveness. It's like putting a speed radar feedback sign everywhere on every street of the city. You just see your speed everywhere you drive, but does it affect anymore? You want to have that, I guess, pay attention to me, I'm different thing out there. With the pavement marking that you're doing, the speed limit on the roadway, I'm sure if we added everywhere on every single road, if we stamp pavement legend everywhere, 30, 25, 35, people will stop paying attention. So I feel like there should be a balance between utilizing these and what purpose we're after. That was my thought. I looked at METCD, I saw it was after width of lane, Okay, if it's a wide lane, to clarify for lateral positioning of the bicyclists for them where to be, put it there. If there is parking, if there is a fast road. So that's why I kind of try to translate the non-objective language of METCD into something objective. I added lane width, I added volume of traffic, I added speed, I added the average daily traffic. I do agree with you, Chair, that we don't want to kind of tie our hands. That's why I did add that number 4 in there to kind of clarify that, hey, nobody can tell me I cannot put a Sharrow anywhere I like. I can still do that. That can be the direction of council. That can be the direction of the commission. We're not deviating from any policy. But if it gets to a point where somebody says, why don't we have Sharrows on 4th Street, for example, in downtown area? Well, there's no bike lane here, and it's the 4th. Why not or on G Street, for example? No, something that we don't feel the need for. We should have some sort of a criteria to objectively evaluate a roadway to see if it makes sense or it doesn't. This is basically to address that gray area where there are a bunch of roads in the city that we are not sure if it makes sense. And obviously, if it's valid off of this, but there's a strong opinion from commission or council, or even the staff for that matter, to just put Sharrows there, we can easily go and do it. So I don't see this really limiting us in any way. It's just a starting point to objectively look at requests. Because most of these policies came from neighborhood requests. We have some, like let's say, most of the policies that we added to our work plan are initiated by those thoughts that came out of neighborhood requests. Why can't I have a blinking stop sign? Well, we have a few of those in town, but many of those are on a case-by-case basis. Commission, council, staff discussing, figuring out, okay, is it a good thing? Why not have some sort of an objective standard to evaluate, okay, is this a good location for a blinking stop sign? Do we need, people come to us, ask for ADA parking in a residential road. Hey, my parents are disabled, they have a blue placard, why can't I have a blue parking in front of my house or my parents' house? I take them to the doctor every day. It's tough to park 200 feet away from my house and bring my parent. So these kind of requests come in and there's no objective policy for us to evaluate. So that's the metric that we try to create to kind of have a way of addressing those. But we're not limiting ourselves if that's the concern.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that, I mean, clearly, I think, like everyone else in the commission, there's concerns when Sharrows are used in lieu of other more protective measures. But I will say, you know, in the vein of everything communicates, and, you know, we spend 3% of our GDP on advertising. This is a branding exercise, and showing people that there are cyclists on this road, and that reminder, I think, can really never be overdone. And even if all of Encinitas was painted green, the rest of California isn't. So it might show people that do, you know, are mobile in Encinitas that it's different, and other things need to be taken into consideration when driving. So I'm all for the idea of you know, putting something like this together so people can understand that they potentially could be eligible for Sharrows on their roads.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Does anyone want to,
I'll move to approve. Sorry, go ahead.
anyone want to put forth a motion, one way or the other?
Yes, I'll move to approve this.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions about that? Okay, so let's have a vote. All those in favor of supporting the policy to implement Sharrow markings on different roadways of the city? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm opposed. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6-1. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is signing and striping plans for annual resurfacing project of the city. Hey, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, break, okay.
We've had a request for a 1-minute break, which probably will end up being 4 minutes.
I'll be back, but I think I...
Amanda, do you know if we're stopping recording or is it still live? Can you check the city website. You could just check on the live link to see if it feeds.
Oh, it says you are still broadcasting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank-
Usually about 3 to 5 days. I mean, just the legwork is about 3 days, but there's usually work behind these to make these ready, not just the actual PDFs. It would be about 2-3 days, but depending on the nature, like Rancho Santa Fe, staff were working on it for like 2 months, going out there and making measurements, surveys, CAD work. The preparation is about 3-4 days. That's why we had an email from Commissioner Hunsberger that why aren't these ready earlier? Yeah, I was sick last week, Monday and Tuesday, so I came to the office Wednesday, and we had to release these in 2 days. Yeah, we try to release these usually midweek before the commission, so there's like 4 or 5 days for the commissioners to look at them. Yeah, well, yeah, publish it. Friday. It takes a lot of iteration. I know that it takes a lot to go through this stuff, so that's there. Thanks for doing it. I guess I'll follow the process. I think we're ready to go midnight now, so.
We are back. Great. Okay, Abe.
Thank you, Chair. So this item, I'm sure many of you are aware, was a part of our annual resurfacing program where our CIP team, whenever they do slurry or repaving full overlay of a roadway, they give us the list of the different roadways of the city that this year are going through this resurfacing, and then we look for opportunities to improve our sounding and striping on the roadway. Because we know they're spending the money to restripe it, might as well stripe it to the way that we recommend. That being said, we identified 4 or 5 different roads that could benefit from a better striping plan, and these were designed, and we didn't have a commission meeting in December and January for me to be able to bring this to the commission. And this was presented for design amenity purposes to the city council. Council received some information from, I think, San Diego Bicycle Coalition, if I'm not mistaken, about some ideas to change some stuff here. And also we had some of our commissioners expressing interest in reviewing this and providing input to staff at that council meeting. So council suggested that before the bid package is put out on the street, we get input from the commissioners on this. Based on what we heard that night and the information on that letter from the Bicycle Coalition, we looked at the design and tried to identify locations where we could make the design better. Unfortunately, not very many. One major reason was that on that letter from the Bicycle Coalition and from what I thought I heard from some of our commissioners, the thought was that this is a major CIP project. This is a signing and a striping project that we're going to change our streets for the better forever. So there might be opportunities that are going to be lost. That is not the case. This is SB1 money, Transnet money. This is the fund that we can only spend on resurfacing our roadways. We cannot use this to buy bollards. We cannot build curbs. We cannot modify the geometry of the roadway in any way. We cannot do any widening, any narrowing, any ADA, or any kind of curb improvement. So this is just a repaving project. The only thing that we can do that we are doing is modifying. So a lot of stuff that were there in that letter from the Bike Coalition about why not convert this to a protected bikeway, a class 4, why not do a road diet, why not convert parking to a lane, why not convert parking to a buffered bike lane, and a lot of those things are not really applicable to this design. There were some information, some good feedback that we heard, and there might be more tonight that we tried to implement. Partly was where we had wide right turn pockets. There was a misunderstanding that night that I think somebody mentioned that there are super wide 20-footer right turn pockets that are dangerous and fast. Well, those are not 20-footer bike lane, 20-footer right turn lanes. They're actually 12-footer right turn lanes with an 8-foot parking lane, which wasn't clear, and we noticed that. So we went back and we tried to clarify there is a parking lane there, so that the confusion is not there that it would be a super fast super fast right turn pocket. There was also areas where we did not have a buffer because of the fact that we had 11-footer outer lanes on El Camino Real. I'm sure this discussion would come up, and I think it was mentioned at that council night. The 11-footers are El Camino are because of the high-speed vehicles that we have on this and the classification of the road being a prime arterial, heavy vehicle traffic, geometry of the roadway, and a lack of any residential facility or business facility even for that matter in this area. That's why we have 11, and the fact that we could accommodate a good bike lane and a good buffer on this road, which gives us the buffer is wide enough to accommodate for potential protection in the future. If we have the money to add bollards and wheel stops, we do have the opportunity with the existing design, with the current design, to do that. But in areas that we were short without a buffer, we tweaked the design and went a half a foot short to 10.5-foot outer lanes, I believe. I think maybe even one, if I'm not mistaken, one area, both of them narrowed by half a foot, number 1 and number 2, to be able to accommodate for a bike lane buffer. If I go to the location where the design was tweaked, yeah, this area right before Manchester, as you can see, where we have a median, we were pretty tight and we didn't have a buffer before. We narrowed the number 1 lane to 10 and the outer to 10.5 to be able to accommodate a 2-footer buffer in this narrower segment. And similarly, this is the parking lane that I was talking about. So this 8-footer parking lane is added and this 7-footer parking lane here to clarify that this is not just a wide right turn pocket. Some other comments I said about downtown, elimination of parking, creating protected bikeway on El Camino. Those were not really applicable, which we couldn't really incorporate into the design. 10-footer lanes are pretty much there everywhere that we could. What else? This is coming from the county area, the transition from the county 13, 12-footer lanes going onto Encinitas Boulevard. A bike lane buffer was added, as you can see, 7s and 4s. Transitioning from the 12 and 13s of county coming in. And this is in front of the city hall, narrowing down the lanes, as you can see, all to 10s. Yeah, there are several improvements from the version that went to council, but to be honest, many of the recommendations of the Bicycle Coalition letter was not really applicable. We couldn't really implement many of those, especially due to the fact that this is not really a major CIP project. This is just a resurfacing project. And with that, I'm open to questions and suggestions from Commission.
Okay, thank you, Abe. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Wong?
Yes, first of all, thank you, Abe, for doing this plan. I like almost all of it, just had a few questions on some of it. First of all, I like the 10-foot lanes. So these are just small details. First of all, west of Via Poco, that's not our jurisdiction, right? That's Caltrans, so we can't do anything about that because the bike lane disappears there, I think.
I do know Caltrans has a project there. There is a signal in progress. They will install a signal there pretty soon. I think it's being, the location is being changed. I think Via Poco is being adjusted with the transit center and the development projects that are happening. There's a lot going on with that gas station. We were recently contacted by Caltrans about them constructing the signal there, and they want to pass it to the city with a new alignment of that intersection, so it's converting to a more, so the way it's kind of bends right now, it will go straight down. It won't bend around the gas station. So there would be a modification, but when they build the signal, they would restripe it. But there is conversation going on of who owns that. They want to pass it to us. I don't like to accept the responsibility because of the proximity to the on and off ramp, and I know how these signals should work together really well, and I don't have authority over their signal. So whatever I do, if any kind of a mistiming happens between the two signal, that westbound is very heavy during peak hours. So I'd rather one jurisdiction have control over these two intersections. So that's why I'd like them to handle it, but we're still talking.
Yeah, I think I read someplace that they were going to try and make the east side of 5 like the west side, like they did on the west side. But I don't remember details of that. So, but
yeah, I don't know what the right-of-way line is. They haven't given us I know they're building a signal, but they haven't given us the signing and the striping plan for the west of Via Poco.
Okay, well, I guess it's too nebulous for us to decide right now. So getting to more specifics, on page 4, I think this is the one where Manchester intersects with El Camino Real, and if you're heading northbound on El Camino Real, and there's a right turn to Manchester, so the bike lane kind of disappears there, whereas it'd be nice if it could transition to the left of the right turn lane, as you have done at Vulcan, for instance, on I think it's page 8, you have something like that, where the bike lane transitions, there's different transition to be on the left side of the right turn lane.
If this is what you're talking about, this is where it says varies.
Correct.
This is not wide enough to accommodate a right turn pocket and the bike lane adjacent to it. If you check the scale, we're probably looking at about 7-8 feet here. So to create a right turn pocket and then adjacent to it on its left, having a bike lane, there's really not room here.
Well, you do have a median there, though.
I said we cannot touch the median. This is not a project that we would touch the median with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope that gets some attention sometime, because that is a dangerous right hook possibility there. Same with that island. I guess you can't touch that either, because that island at the, where that crosswalk is, that one, if it were a little bit
Jim,
shorter.
can you speak more into the microphone? I can't hear you.
Sorry, that island that's at the right turn, where the crosswalk hits it, that one actually sticks out a little further than it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have a space for bikes to stop there, but I guess you can't change that.
Correct. Yes, we had a comment at the council meeting. I think it was Chair Van Newman, if I remember correctly, about the lack of buffer for that bike lane. Our engineer spent hours before designing this to be able to fit that bike lane in, due to the shift in lane width and the transition. You can see how the lanes getting to the intersection kind of tilt toward east. It was very much impossible to fit this bike lane in and still meet the transition requirements, but we were able to put it in. But
You're talking about that 5-foot bike lane that's
correct.
to the
There's a
north
small
of,
one here on this side. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really tried hard to add these elements in there. There's a lot more to it that meets the eye. It's not like, okay, well, there's 3 foot here, there's 2 foot there. To kind of mix and match all these different, 1-footers and 2-footers and try to make the transitions work and still meet the MUTCD guidelines, it wasn't easy. If we could narrow down the median or trim, the edge of the road or median, we certainly could do a lot better. But again, because of the fact that this is just a pavement project, we couldn't really count on any kind of a edge of the road widening or trimming the median or anything like that.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for trying. I hope you're successful in the future at that effort, but I understand why you can't do it now. So on, I think it's on page 5, this may be just a drawing, difficult with drawing, but the intersection with F and 101 up in the upper left corner. So why not have continental crosswalks on all 4 sides? And right now you have,
This one?
yes, it's to the very left of that, the very
Ye-
left side of the drawing.
Where my cursor is at?
No, the left edge. It's not all shown on this right now. Just move all the way to the left edge. See that intersection there? If you can see the the left edge of that, correct. So those
I see.
all 4 of those crosswalks, I think, should be continental intersections.
I mean, I can check. I have a feeling this might be stamped concrete.
Okay.
SF and 101. Are we connected to internet?
You're saying there's a physical limitation why you can't do that.
No, if there's a stamped concrete, we don't paint over those. Whereas F.
Or you're saying it's not a painted intersection, it's a,
Yeah. So yeah, this is yeah. We don't paint over these. These
okay.
paint doesn't stick to the other 2 legs that are regular. They are being converted to
Okay.
continental.
No worries. Thanks for
Yeah,
the
these
explanation.
2 are.
I imagine that's the same situation at G and 101 as well.
G and 101 is the surfboards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the.
Okay, fair enough.
Abe, can you clarify, what is a continental crosswalk? I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Sure, absolutely. Continental is like this, where you have a 2-foot wide bar with a 3-foot wide gap in between, and no ladder lines. So just the bars of the crosswalk without the 2 longitudinal lines that makes it like a ladder. So these are
And what's good about that? Or why is that important?
Continental is considered as high visibility, and it's basically the new standard practice the past 10, 12 years. Some cities do it differently. with regards to the width of the bar and the spacing between the bars. Some, like I'm sure you've noticed in Solana Beach, they kind of leave a little bit of a gap where the tires are on the lane, not to fade that specific bar where tires kind of cross by. So the spacing between them are not uniform. So yeah, there are some differences. Some do wider gaps, some do very narrow lines. But the 2 and 3 having 2 foot wide white lines and 3 foot gaps, I would say about 80% of California uses that these days.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Okay, just one more. It's on page 10, the one with Westlake. Right there. So in the lower left corner, there's that turn, and you have the bike lane next to the traffic lane and a buffer next to the curb. So where it says 6 feet and 10 feet, just in the
Is this the one?
that's correct drawing, but the lower left corner.
Lower left corner.
Right.
Here?
Correct, right there. So you see how you have the
Correct.
hatching on the curb side, and then the bike lane, then the traffic lane. Why not put the bike lane next to the curb and the cross hatching in between the traffic lane and the bike hatching, serving as a buffer?
Yeah, that area, the curb kind of widens a little bit abruptly. I don't know if you've driven there. So we would, I mean, I guess with the speed of bikes, it's okay, but it wouldn't be a smooth bike path. It would look like as if we're introducing 2 short turns into the bike path. But
Yeah, I
it's
understand.
doable because of the lower speed of bikes. It's fine.
Yeah, besides, I think bikes can always cut the corner if they want to,
Yeah.
cross hatching, so, but this gives them a little more room. So-
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, and that's basically all I had, so thanks very much for your drawings.
Okay, any other questions, comments from anybody?
I had one, maybe, just because you mentioned, I guess, some confusion originally when they saw the drawings and what was parking and, especially on the right turn lane. One question is just that, I know some legislators in California recently are trying to pass AB 413, which is daylighting on all crosswalks, which I guess is the removal of the last parking spot before the crosswalk. Is there any opportunities in this plan to allow for daylighting?
I'm not sure what the language of AB 413 is, but the way it is right now, METCD does recommend removing the last parking space. We usually do it even more than that at intersections. But yeah, I think most of our crosswalks, because of sight distance concerns, we do have at least 1 or 2 parking spaces removed. But this doesn't specifically to say we've checked every intersection to identify locations for potential red curbing. No, we haven't done this.
Okay. Is it possible with this plan?
It is, but that specific contractor would not do any kind of curb painting. They're doing resurfacing, they're doing asphalt and restriping. But we have a different contractor that we can task them to go out and do red curbing as needed. I don't really think we have too many new crosswalks with this. I can certainly look into it for the existing crosswalks to see if there is any kind of sight distance concern to do red curbing. But that's definitely something that we should consider. If there is a location where parking goes all the way to a crosswalk, we should resolve that. But I don't think we would, because most of these are existing crosswalks.
Okay.
I don't think there are really major sight distance concerns there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I have a couple comments and questions. So with these 5 plans and everything, all these streets are either getting a slurry seal or any of them getting an overlay?
I don't know.
Okay.
I do have the list, but I guess for our purpose, we didn't really differentiate between overlay or slurry. I guess it
Okay,
does
all
matter
right.
if you're after which one would be resurfaced again. It does matter if it's being slurried or resurfaced. But for our short-term goal, which is just restriping, for us, it doesn't matter really.
Okay, all right. So I want to go back to the Manchester from Via Poco area. And I appreciate the additional buffers on the bike lanes that I think were done after the last council meeting. I do push on these 11-foot bike width of bike lanes. I don't see any reason why we need 11 foot there. They should all be 10 foot or 10 and a half foot because that's basically what the city goal is. You mentioned that the reason why they are 11 feet is because of the traffic speeds. So if we want to slow down traffic speeds, why are we giving them extra width to go faster? So this does nothing to lower traffic speeds. So I personally cannot support this striping plan that shows 11-foot bike lane or travel lanes on Manchester, either going north or south. It's a problem that we have all the way from Via Poco up to Santa Fe Drive. And we have wide travel lanes and high speeds. There's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit north of Manchester at South El Camino Real going north. And if we're just duplicating essentially the same wide bike travel lanes, we're doing nothing. And even though it is a major road, I don't know, what did you call it, arterial or something, there is nothing in any vehicle code or anything that says arterials or collectors or primary. There is no correlation with speeds. They do not have to be high-speed roads. And I see, this is the entrance into our city. I don't know why we aren't doing as much as we can to give people to encourage them to slow down. That we don't want highways bisecting our city. So I do appreciate the effort that goes into this and some of the improvements on there, especially when there's buffers on some of the bike lanes, especially like in front of the temple and the Greek church and all. I really appreciate those, but I see no reason why we are continuing with 11-foot or even 10-and-a-half-foot bike lane or travel lanes. So for that reason, I can't support this plan, but those are just my thoughts. Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas, comments?
Well, I certainly agree with you, Chair. Maybe we can approve this with the recommendation that those lanes be narrowed.
Is that a possibility, or is that not a possibility, Abe? What is the reasoning behind these lanes being the width they are? I mean, I realize we do need to have arteries where cars can move in and out and make traffic flow, but what is the reasoning behind this?
I mean, I mean, there is the technical side, and then there is the, I guess, side of reason and just, justifying it based on common sense side. On the technical side, which wouldn't apply to the whole length of the corridor, but certainly the first segment east of the freeway, the design guidelines say when you have a sending or receiving lane to Caltrans right away, your lanes cannot be below 11. So that's the technical, but it's easy to say that segment shouldn't go all the way to Manchester, which, somebody might say, well, Via Poco is the first intersection, and then after that is the city, and it's not the first segment. But if you want to be fair, it is safe to assume that vehicles who come and go toward Caltrans right away at least come all the way to Manchester, if not higher. The second Manchester, the signal at Manchester. That's where there's a California mandate for 11-footer lane when sending receiving lanes to Caltrans right away. On the reason side, as you mentioned, when the whole topic of roadway classification from my years in college came up, there was always this trade-off between the mobility of the road and then the accessibility of the road, where you have more driveways, more businesses, more town centers, more gas stations, more residential. Where you have more activity on the roadway, the accessibility goes up and the mobility should go down. and vice versa, where you have a road that's your major primary, this is the highest classification of the city. You want it to carry 30,000 vehicles, 40,000 vehicles per day. It's acting as your support for your freeway. Whenever something happens on the freeway, you want this road to act as a support for that. That's, I guess, the reasoning behind it, that we do not want to compromise. We have semi-trailers here. Those trailers have very limited control with those loads. We're putting them beside our own vehicles. If I have a 10-footer lane adjacent to another 10-footer lane and there is a semi, with, I don't know, tens of tons of load on them, and now we're asking them, okay, be careful. You're on a, road just beside another vehicle, try not to sideswipe them. These are the concerns. We cannot take them off of this road. This is a truck route road of the city. It carries the most number of, semis in the city. So these are, I guess, the judgment piece of it, where we decided, well, we are already accommodating bike lanes. We're giving a very good bike lane, a very good buffer is there. Narrowing the lane without the existence of bollards or wheel stops to prevent vehicles from getting into the bike lane won't really make it much safer. If somebody loses control, ends in the bike lane, it's still a dangerous situation. So that half a foot wouldn't really, if somebody loses control, with the traffic calming effect of it, I'm not denying it, it will have traffic calming effect. 10 is calmer than 11, obviously. But because of these multiple reasons that I mentioned, I think this is a good win-win situation to get, because this is not status quo. Right now, the width is over there, I think it's like 16 or 17. So we are narrowing the lane, but not to 10, obviously. I think it's a good compromise. It will have traffic calming effect, not obviously to the maximum level that we might like, but because of all these different factors that I mentioned, 11 is my recommendation. If I take it to council next round, I will again mention, if this is the commission's vote to go for a 10.5, that this was presented to commission, and commission's vote was not to support this due to the need for this to be converted to 10. But my recommendation to council will still be 11.
Thank you for explaining that. And I think after listening to just the fire department discuss how difficult it is to navigate their trucks on a 10-foot stretch of road, which, they seem to do well, but they're traveling at much slower speeds. I agree. I don't want cyclists, being, I don't want semis going into cycling lanes. And I think that we do need to provide faster moving vehicles with a little bit wider lane. I appreciate that you have narrowed these down significantly from 16. And I also really want to thank you for always taking public input and trying to, accommodate everybody and explaining why you couldn't make the bike lanes wider. And I really just appreciate how you work with the citizens and this commission to try and make it safer. And I'm glad they're narrowed, and thank you for explaining why it's important for them to stay at 11 and 10.5.
Okay, seeing as there's no other questions or discussion, someone want to put forward a motion to support the striping changes?
I'll move that. I move we support the striping changes.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
Commissioner Trout seconds. Okay, we'll have a vote. All those in favor of supporting the striping changes for the annual resurfacing project, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? One opposed. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 to 1 again. All right. Thank you. I do like the fact that the lanes are narrowed. I know that city policy is 10.5 foot lanes, and I don't see any reason why we can't do that on this stretch of Manchester. All right. The next items on the agenda are the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission project updates, and then also the follow-up log. And for time purposes, if I want to ask the commission, do we need Abe to go through all these items, or if we have a question about one of them, then we entertain that? Is that okay with you, Abe?
Absolutely, yes, sure.
So is that okay with the commission, seeing as a bunch of nods? Okay, so let's take a look first, and does anyone have any questions on the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission project updates? I also do want to thank Amanda and Abe for separating these two forms again. I think it's very helpful, so thank you very much for that.
Kudos all goes to Amanda. I didn't have much to do with it.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. All right, anybody have any comments or questions about the project updates?
I have one quick comment. Sorry, did I step on you, Mr. Commissioner Wong? Okay. I just wanted to thank Abe and the entire staff for meeting multiple times with the community on Eolis, and I know that that is going to be on, I think, Wednesday's meeting. But I do appreciate that you came out and helped to redesign the traffic circle on Andrew and Eolis, and the data shows that the traffic circle is slowing traffic and improving safety at this intersection, and it's just much appreciated. It's been a lot of your time, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the community.
Thank you.
Okay, no other comments on that. We'll move to the follow-up log. And I have one question, and it goes back to number 62, Sharrows on San Elijo between Kilkenny and Manchester. And the notes and status say not recommended, but according to everything, the ATP and everything, they can be put there. Is there a reason why you didn't put it? The reason why I ask is this is a very narrow road, and it's twisty and turny, and so visibility is very restricted for automobiles. And so having Sharrows marked there, it's a Class 3 bike route, I believe, would help alert motorists to that a bicycle may be right around the corner.
Yes, Chair, I did see that on the ATP. My main goal, and again, you're welcome to recommend otherwise, and this is one of those areas where there's really no objective way of verifying this. My concern was the false sense of security. I felt like the fact that we don't have Sharrows there for much of the corridor in that area, to just add a Sharrow in that curvy, very, I guess, limited visibility area, it might give that false sense of security to the cyclists. Now that there is a Sharrow here, everybody would notice me. They're still allowed to ride there. Maybe we can find a way to notify the drivers about potential cyclists with a different way. Maybe, I don't know, they removed the watch for cyclists from MUTCD, but there is a different sign. Maybe we can put something there to notify, maybe some sort of a different delineation. I know the width is not there to add any kind of edge area, but I really feel like I haven't seen that many cyclists. The ones that I've seen there, they really ride to the edge. I haven't seen even sports cyclists to use the lane. I don't know if I mean, I know we have some good cyclists. You use the middle of lane there. I mean, uphill I can see that, but downhill, do you get the lane going downhill there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel it's.
If you go there on Saturday morning, between 8 and 9, you'll see dozens and dozens of bicycle riders going up and down that area.
No, but the middle for downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, my concern was I mean, it is a safe. If we implement it, it's not going to be, against any kind of, it's in our ATP. It does meet the, the geometry. My concern, the reason I don't recommend it is just false sense of security. But if it's a recommendation of commission, I can reconsider. If you feel strongly, why is it just a purpose to just notify drivers that they should expect cyclists? Is that what you think?
It's to notify automobiles and trucks that there could be a bicycle in the middle of the road.
Yeah, because as mentioned previously, we have this Sharrow for like the lateral positioning of the bicyclist or for wider lanes. This is not a wide lane. Nobody would expect passing a bicyclist if they see a bicyclist. So it's not going to serve those purposes. It would be mostly, I guess, only for notifying the drivers about the potential presence of bicyclists, which I get it. It's just
cars pass bicyclists going around the blind corners now.
Well, don't we have a center line? I think we have a center line there, right?
They ignore the
There is
double
no
line.
Sharrow Lane.
The center line.
They ignore the double line.
Yeah.
They ignore it.
Boy, I don't even, yeah, I think there's center line, but
Yeah.
that doesn't matter to people who are
Gosh.
late to the VGs. I don't know.
Okay.
I just think, you know, that they should be there, so that's my only comment. I wish they would be put in there.
In fact, I don't think the Sharrow should stop at Kilkenny. I think they should go all the way to the park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, all the way to Glen Park.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's posted 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, but, you know, if you do a speed survey there, I think you'd be shocked. But anyway, those are my comments on follow-up log. Anybody else have any other comments on follow-up log?
Yes, I
I'd
did.
love to see Sharrows there, but,
I did. Actually, on the two I initiated, number 60, which is so signal timing for bicycles at wide roads, and number 57, which is bike loop detection signage, the symbol. So they're both rated as high staff time required and fiscal impact as medium. And I know those are not quantitative numbers, but they still seem like they shouldn't take that much staff time because you don't have to design a symbol. You know where the loops are. And the fiscal impact, again, this is from a naive point of view, doesn't seem like it should be that much either because it's mainly paint, so $1,000 or so.
So two things, the bike loop detection signage, my understanding, I mean, I can go back and check the minutes. I felt like from the information I got from our signal maintenance contractor, they weren't agreeing that with the increased sensitivity of the loops, we can make them work with the bicyclists. They said you have to change your loops. That's why I have it as, and then I think we agreed on choosing only 10 pilot locations to test new loops, and that's where I have it as not funded unless I read the minutes wrong. I felt like we agreed that with the existing loops we could not just paint a legend and the bikers stop on them and they're detected. Am I wrong?
Well, I know for a fact that there are some intersections where the loop is sensitive to bike, and I can trigger it consistently because I can see where the loop is. For instance, McKinnon in Birmingham is one, and the one on the by the water plant at Manchester, across from the Nature Conservancy. I know I can't see where the loop is, but sometimes I can trigger that loop if I put my bike in the right place. So it's sensitive enough. It's just that I don't always know where to put my bike.
Gotcha. Let me double check again. If there are locations where our loops are, where we don't need, if we don't need any new loop work or we have to take out the existing loop and do rewiring or anything, if that's the case, obviously it's not going to be a highly impactful modification. Let me revisit this. I'll report back at the next commission meeting if it's something that our existing loops, maybe I can check our inventory. Maybe there are some newer loops and some older loops. Maybe our loops are different and some have different detection capacity. We can certainly mark the ones that do detect bikes. There's no problem with that. It's just to replace all the loops to bike detecting
I'm not
loops.
asking for that. I'm just asking for ones where there are existing loops that are sensitive enough. And I understand some may not be sensitive enough. And I also understand why sometimes you don't want to mark loops where you cannot consistently trigger the signal because that would be misleading. Because you say, you put your bike here, it'll trigger, and it doesn't. You don't really want to do that. And I understand that. If you need a test bicycle wheel to test the loop sensitivity, I'm happy to give you one of those too.
Thank you. We have the Renault bikes that we can get.
Okay.
Those are pretty heavy, yeah.
Okay.
Those are actually good ones for triggering loops because they're very heavy, I think.
Well, of
Couple
course,
hundred
it's not
pounds.
weight sensitive. It is a size.
Well, the metal part, I think isn't it a metal detector? I think it's based on metal detection, right?
Yes, but it's still not weight factor. It's the size of the loop, which is one reason why smaller bikes don't work so well. Okay, so that takes care of the loop detection signal. The other one was signal timing, and that's only for wide streets such as El Camino Real, at Lucadia, Leeuwenhoek, that intersection. I think it's like 8 lanes wide or 7 lanes wide, if you're going east-west, and sometimes if that light turns green and I'm on my bike, I don't have enough time to get all the way across before it starts turning red. So that's just changing the minimum time.
I recently adjusted Balur to give more time for Encinitas crossing Balur, to give more minimum green for cyclists. We are doing a whole citywide overhaul of our signal system this year, so we would be able to retime all of those minimum greens to accommodate for the cyclists. So
Okay,
that's a project underway. It will happen this year.
Okay, I much appreciate that. Maybe you can change the scheduled date or fiscal impact, or one of those, to reflect that it's more probable now. So that's all I had. Thanks very much, Abe.
Okay, anybody else? Commissioner Hansberger?
Hi, I have two. Could you zoom in on 64 for me? And also, I do want to say I'm glad we're going to move forward with the loop detection. I think that's a great idea. And I do also support marking along Manchester. I think it's a good way to alert, but not that you were asking for my input, but just sharing. Okay. When we look at number 64, shouldn't it say to evaluate Vulcan south of La Costa Avenue to Paul Ecke for a west side edge? I think it says south of Lucadia. It says south of Lucadia, but it's actually south of La Costa. We're starting along La Costa all the way to Paul Ecke. So can that be straightened out?
Sure.
And then any update on that, and any update on grant funding for that?
Yeah, our SANDA grant will, the result will come out in April or May, so fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again so much for writing that grant.
Yeah, we're optimistic, but yeah, you'll never know. We're also parallel getting ready for that small chance of, I guess, unsuccess to do a quick build there. No promises.
Thank you.
We're just working parallel. If in case we don't win it, to have something ready to go forward as a quick build. We don't have the funding for it, but the fact that we're in the budget season, when the results come out, it would be our budget season. Maybe council can dedicate some sort of funding for a quick build. Maybe we can do some sort of not necessarily a DG, I mean, even the DG would be above $1 million, but maybe we can do something, I don't know, a dirt path or something that's a little cleaner, at least realign the parking and create some sort of a pathway behind it.
Thank you.
We'll find a way to do something there for sure this year.
Thank you. And the surface that was put down for the parking is actually pretty fabulous. So if we could just even turn the bollard
Yeah.
sideways, and we can then, walk and bike along there, and that'd be really nice. And then my next one was number 53, back to my Hygeia roundabout. I'm not gonna let it go. It's designed, it was fully funded at one point. Anyway, Tony did say at the last city council meeting I was at, he said to me that it was bad news that the grant for the Hygeia roundabout did not get funded. Any other information? Is there another one you're gonna hopefully apply for, since that's a safe route to school and we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars designing it, and it would be spectacular to finish it?
Yeah, I do know our CIP team applied for one or two grants. I think the raised one was the one that wasn't successful, but I think there is another one. I'm not sure what the timing of it is, but it is like whenever a grant opportunity comes up, I think there is a new one, SS4A, if I'm not mistaken. I think the SS4A also, the city was looking into applying for that. But yeah, whenever there is an opportunity, we apply, because we all know we need help with that project.
Thank you.
The streetscape is kind of moving forward. Now that's the second big hole of the city that we have to fill, so.
Yeah, yes, much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, on the log. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I don't know if Traffic Commission has thanked you for getting that DG walkway at the corner of Manchester and San Elijo down to the Nature Center. The new ripped out a bunch of non-native plants, and there's a nice walkway. So I think that's a really good addition to the community, and makes it a lot safer for people.
It was also concrete, too. You guys did some concrete work and crosswalks. That was really fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, I've used that multiple times already.
And it happened relatively quickly.
It did. It happened relatively quickly. And I did also want to thank staff because I brought to the attention that our little trail along Vulcan, I know it's temporary and we're going to get a permanent one, but somebody went out and graded it for me, so thank you. So I can now use it again. So whoever did it on staff, I don't know if it was City Works, but much appreciated. I was using it just the other day.
Waiting for the next rainstorm.
Well, I used it in between.
Okay, next item is Commissioner Corner. Does anybody have any items for Commissioner Corner?
I do. I'd like to revisit the issue brought up by our speakers at Oral Communications, Judy and Christine, about safe routes to schools, because I think that's a fairly good, low-cost implementation with a good cost-benefit ratio. And that's mainly just putting up post pylons at the ends of the double lines at intersections so that cars cannot cut the corners. There were some bulb outs at corners of the intersections as well. Those would be a little more expensive, but just the pylons would help a lot, I think. We don't, I imagine you have copies of the figures that Tom Bertulis drew. He's with KTUNA, I believe.
It's right there. It's on the.
We have these, and we received these from our, I think, Councilmember Hensy, if I'm not mistaken. I have a few concerns, and I got to talk to our city engineer, our fire department. I do know they most probably will not accept these treatments because of the fact that at corners, their vehicles need to hug the curb return. And this is basically, it doesn't look like it, but it would be a speed hump for them. And at all these corners, it would be a major impact to their vehicles making these right turns. If we do them without the hump, it's doable just with pavement marking, but I don't know if they're going to be any effective without adding those bumps. At the center, these bollard-shaped vertical delineators, those are doable. The sign is not. That's actually a temporary, like we cannot do that sign in the middle of a road. That is a 24-inch wide sign, and it would clip vehicles. I wouldn't, because my double yellows a lot of time is only 2 4-inch or 2 6-inch lines. I don't have the width to put that in there. And
So that sign that says state law, that's 24 inches?
yeah, with the edges, yeah, it's. I mean, there is a small version that's 18, but yeah, even the 18 would be wider than. For it to be visible, you need to have the.
Okay, but the mere pylon would be okay.
Commissioner Wong, did you bring this up in the hopes that it would be put on our follow-up log?
Correct, further investigation, yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry to cut off the analysis, Abe, but we need is it 2 others or 3 other commissioners to put up, just 2 other commissioners to put this up on the follow-up log? So do we have 2 other commissioners?
I would like to see it on the follow-up blog.
Okay, all right. So we'll put that quick build presentation or work on the follow-up log.
Thank you for that comment, Chair, because there's no point in having discussion if the best we can do is get on the follow-up log, and we've already got that.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else, Commissioner Corner? Commissioner Standifer.
Thank you. Just a comment. I really appreciated getting the report on the accidents and the citations. And I think I would say that's a good start. It seemed hopeful that we could drill down on some of that information and get a little more analysis about the types of accidents and citations that are being given.
Right.
Is that the plan, to start each meeting with that table from now on and a report from the sheriff, if possible? Can we request that?
I mean, I can ask them to send us a report, but they asked to be present quarterly. I mean, I can ask them to send us the document and just to attach to our agenda package. I think we can do that. But for them to come here, I mean, I can ask, but the previous traffic sergeant asked to be here only for quarterly, like once a quarter.
Okay, well, can we ask to have that?
Yeah, I sure can ask them.
And maybe, if possible, to break the data down as well. I know that we were wondering, what the types of accidents, and I'm not sure how the data can be broken down, but if they could break it down a little further for us, that would be much appreciated.
And is that, I guess to ask Ken, Abe, is that data available to the public?
As mentioned, I don't think you would have access to their database or the suiters, but if you like to see, there is a good website on the Berkeley. It's called TIMS Berkeley, TIMS Berkeley. TIMS Berkeley gets most of the georeference data from suiters. So suiters data has a little bit of complication when it comes to addresses, because it comes purely off of the collision reports that deputies write. For example, on suiters, there are like 20 different names for South Coast Highway 101, Coast 101, H101, Highway 101. So it makes it a little complicated to sort the data from suiters. So the raw data, Amanda on our side downloads it and then analyzes it and creates a more, I guess, playable, readable table off of the suiters. But the Berkeley one, they do the legwork and they put it in GIS, and it's a graphic base, and you can see the maps, and they create a lot of good charts and bar charts and tables. You can filter different for whatever you want. Okay, show me accidents of this nature caused by this for this age and this gender, for example, and it generates you all those charts. The downside to that is because of the complication with interpreting suiters data, it only has about 85% of the suiters information. So the number of collisions there is about 10% less to 15% less. But the good thing is it's not raw, just text, and it's actual charts and bar charts and diagrams. And there's a lot of nice, cool, visually pleasing information in there. And it's free for, I think everybody can make a login. It's called TIMS Berkeley.
Okay, we're getting close to adjournment. I just want to make a couple of comments. This is my last meeting as a member of the commission, and I want to thank Amanda and Abe and all the fellow commissioners for everything. When I first started getting interested in this, traffic and mobility stuff was probably 2014, when I saw a proposal to increase the speed limit on Requesa to, I think it was 40 miles an hour or something. And I started coming to mobility and traffic, or at the time it was Traffic and Public Safety Commission meetings and also city councils. So in that time period, I've seen an awful lot of improvements, and it's not an easy thing to do change. And there are times when perhaps I'm obstinate or not, don't seem to be supportive of what the city is doing, but I am very much in support of what the city is doing. We can do better, and we need to do better, but we have a great head start, and I'm just glad that I live in Encinitas. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Michael.
we certainly want to thank you for moderating keeping us under control. You've done a great job of doing that.
Herding cats.
Yes.
But anyway, with no other business, I move that we adjourn the meeting, and we adjourn. We stand adjourned. Thank you.